SAA has expressed concerns about the rising tensions in Mozambique and the potential influx of Mozambicans into South Africa. This comes amid the ongoing demonstrations over the integrity of the recent presidential and parliamentary elections. Tragically, opposition lawyer Elvis Diasa was gunned down while preparing to contest the alleged election irregularities. Action SA leader in Parliament Ethel Trollip says they plan to write to President Cyril Ramaphosa and the International Relations Minister to intervene. The top story at 3 o'clock, 7 suspects have been arrested for allegedly issuing fraudulent driver's licenses during an intelligence-driven operation in 2 provinces. For SAFM News,
and coming up in your sports this hour, Makram heaps praise on the Proteas after beating Bangladesh. Banyana all set for their clash against Denmark, and Kawa reacts to 2025 Women's Rugby World Cup draw. More details at 3:30.
The reality is that 90% of South Africans don't save enough for retirement. This National Seniors Month, why not be part of the 10% who do? Choose an interest rate of up to 11.7% after 60 months with a Nedbank Electronic Optimum Plus account. Anyone 55 and over can open one on the Money app in less than 2 minutes. Go to nedbank.co.za for more info. See money differently. Nedbank. We're a licensed FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
South African Airways is expanding in the DRC. We now offer direct flights from Johannesburg to Lubumbashi, the heart of the DRC's mining hub. Our convenient arrival time allows seamless connections to key regions like Ndola and the Copper Belt, opening up new growth opportunities. Traders can benefit from our generous baggage allowance, while SAA's superior aircraft belly capacity ensures your cargo reaches most parts of Congo on the same day. Book now at flysaa.com or contact your travel agent. South African Airways, connecting Africa to the world, one flight at a time.
If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable for you. Whether it's a civil, criminal, or labor-related matter, we have a nationwide panel of attorneys standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195 and we'll call you back. Clientele General is a licensed non-life insurer and an authorized FSP. Standard rates and terms and conditions apply.
And we went on a water safari and Mom spotted a hippo and it said...
There is a place where you can see wonder and the wild with breathtaking scenery and endless landscapes. Enjoy good food and embrace great taste.
And the next day we went to the Reed Dance. I saw the maidens handing over reeds to the mighty Zulu king and the Zulu warriors chanting, Baye!
Explore all this and more in the magical Zulu Kingdom.
This message is brought to you by KZN Tourism and Film Authority.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
So you meet a person waiting maybe at a doctor's surgery or maybe in a bus or on a train or maybe your Uber driver or your family, and they say, what's really bugging you about South Africa today? So let me rephrase. Therefore, what moves the national pulse today? What can you think about the biggest issues in the country that most concerns you? And I'm talking about today, present tense, not last week, not next year. I'm talking about now. What are the biggest issues that have developed over the last 24 hours and certainly now as we start the show? I'd love to hear from you. And as always, just a quick comment is great. And the best way to do that is a text form 0614 104 107. You can text us. You can also post on social media, Facebook as well as on the Twitter or X platform to say, hey, that for me is what moves the national pulse today. Because we then have the conversations, we move the conversations that really matter. You can call in later on in terms of the big issues that you wish to get off your chest. 086 000 2032. Right? My name is Ashraf Garda. As always, great to have you with us on this journey as we discover daily fingers on the pulse. So really appreciate it. So tell me where you are, wherever you are in the country, whichever dorpie you are from, or the big city, or the province, or wherever you may be in the world, somehow or the other. connected to the umbilical cord that is South Africa. Right, let's certainly pick up on an issue that there's no question it's moved the national pulse for the last day or so at least, right? You may be following the story of the DA's position, certainly as per their statement from their leader, John Steenhuisen, being rather disappointed that the president of our country, President Ramaphosa, spoke about at the BRICS summit that Russia, or in this case Putin, are very much friends of South Africa. And in fact, the DA's line has been like, speak for yourself. And if you're speaking on behalf of the country, then you needed to get the buy-in of the GNU because there's a different way of doing things. Now, that position has been ongoing. There's been further comments. Yesterday we had a spokesperson, Helen Zille, has been saying certain things as well. I'll try and get those comments of Helen Zille too. I think it's really important. But what we thought is this, and we've also had the spokesperson from the presidency also commenting and making it very clear. And I want to just repeat what he said. I'm talking about Vincent Magwenya. He's saying the DA retains the right to maintain its own foreign policy position. However, that position cannot be imposed on the president under the guise of the GNU. The president will not be micromanaged by the DA in his execution of South Africa's foreign policy. So what does that really mean? If not so much for the DA, what does it mean for the African National Congress? Mahlengi Bengu Motsiri is with me. Appreciate your time, and you are now certainly connected to the National Pulse.
Yes, thank you very much, Ashraf.
Thank you. So first of all, give us your overall thoughts about the conversations that have been taking place between the DA and effectively the presidency over the last day or so regarding what the president has been saying about Russia and Putin.
Well, I actually just think that it's a really misplaced conversation, given the fact that there is nothing in the statement of intent that, joined up all these parties that are part of the Government of National Unity. There's nothing in that statement of intent that suggests that the president needs to consult anyone in executing the roles of a president that are enshrined in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And the idea that the president needs to go and consult with all the parties in the GNU and the DA, which describes itself as the key partner in the GNU, something that we don't quite understand because the statement in intent talks about partners to the GNU. So there's nothing that requires the president to go and consult about implementing a policy of government. So not the policy of the ANC.
Okay, so why then would the DA feel that that's not the case? That in fact they have to be consulted, particularly now there's the GNU, and there are obviously rules of engagement that we may not be fully aware of. They certainly believe that they should be consulted.
Well, I'm obviously very uncertain as to where this comes from. And it's also noteworthy that what Helen Zille does and his tone around the Government of National Unity and constant conditionalities that she puts are somewhat different from time to time from that of the DA leader, John Steenhuisen. He is quoted, having been interviewed previously when he went to China, as having said he would go to Russia when asked whether he would go to Russia, and he said, "I would go to Russia if it's in the national interest." The president is there to basically pursue our international relations and cooperation policy, and that policy does include relationships with Russia, trade relations, cultural diplomacy, and the works. There's absolutely nothing untoward about the president saying Russia is our ally. That expression has been used with many other countries, India, China, and others. It's not unique to Russia. And the lifting of Russia is indicative of the ideological dispositions of the DA. I certainly am certain that if the president used those same words with Israel or with the US, certainly you wouldn't be having the brouhaha that you are having at the moment.
Okay, but I think the essence, and I'll go back to the point, it's not so much, and understand, broad global diplomacy that has to take place. So you don't go to countries and tell a president directly that, I don't like your country, even though you may go to a country often that you may not like. I mean, that happens, right? And I think the DA has conceded that. In fact, in terms of John Steenhuisen saying he will go to Russia, he will go to China if needs be. But the bigger issue still remains that they feel that the president effectively is speaking on behalf of the country in praising Russia, but in reality he is putting forward an ANC position and not a national position.
Well, I'm not certain what is the basis for that. I mean, I think, media houses would do good to really get to exactly what is underpinning that statement. Because, as I say, the South African government has a relationship with Russia that is layered, a type of a relationship that has been going on. Now, I do not know what it is about, and certainly as the ANC, we do not know what it is about the visit by the president to Russia, the call for a national dialogue that is currently being spearheaded by the deputy president. What is it about those initiatives that requires that the GNU partners agree before government does the work that government is there to do? If I may just say, clarify, and I'm drawing parallels with the idea that the national dialogue has not been consulted on. A statement, a tweet by Helen Zille.
Yes, I see that. Can I just read that tweet aloud, just so that there's context for the audience, right? So,
yes.
So there's been a call by the deputy president for the inaugural national dialogue to be held on December the 16th. So Helen Zille has tweeted saying, "We made it clear from the start of the GNU negotiations that the national dialogue must be a joint initiative, planned and executed by the key GNU governance partners. But here goes the ANC unilaterally, as usual, as if they won the election." Okay, you can comment.
Ashraf, I think that one of the things that we're struggling with here is the idea that the ANC is in a coalition government with the DA. There's just a serious conceptual confusion in the way the DA seems to suggest that decision-making must happen between the ANC and the DA alone. The ANC-led Government of National Unity is made up of 10 parties to the GNU, and all of them have got to operate from the same script. I just want to clarify that point. But back to this issue about the national dialogue. The national dialogue was even endorsed through the statement of intent, but it is actually a dream and a vision that was spelled out by eminent persons such as former President Mbeki. And the intention of the dialogue has always been understood to be an attempt at bringing South Africans together, the different sectors, interest groups, to talk about the future South Africa, to talk about the transformation trajectory that we need to be pursuing to consolidate democracy, to consolidate constitutionalism, to drive the economy, to grow jobs, and to do a social compact across all sectors. It was never a dialogue to discuss the mechanics of the GNU. Again, it's serious conceptual confusion. It was never an idea between the DA and the ANC. It is an idea between government and the entirety of society. Certainly, that is our understanding as the ANC.
All right, I hear you, and we can talk about this till tomorrow, I'm sure, and there'll be further comment. But the key part here, the point made by Helen Zille now, and yes, I suppose as we talk about the national dialogue, we still refer to the Russian issue about the valuable ally and a friend. I hear that, right? The essence is that the DA, yes, they're not the only partner in the GNU, but they certainly are a significant partner, and you know that, and I do. Their sense is that they're not being consulted. Now, you can help us with this in terms of the negotiation that then
by the Deputy President is inclusive of party representatives and other sections of society, the faith-based organizations, business, and so on and so on. So it's very much a consultative process and a very inclusive process. Where the DA gets it wrong seems to suggest that there has got to be a special dispensation that allows for the ANC and the DA to hatch out the details and the modalities of such a process. And I'm just inferring from the tweet by Helen Zille. It is not the case. It is supposed to be an inclusive process, including the ANC and the DA as participants. It's a government-driven process bringing together society and interest groups. So that's the one thing. And the reason why I keep harping on the point that right from the get-go, when this was being negotiated, the statement of intent was being negotiated, we were hard-pressed as the ANC to clarify that the government remains government. It must do the work that it does. Remember, we may not have achieved an outright majority, but we remain the party with the largest vote share in that government of national unity. Now, that's the first point. The second point, Ashraf, there is nothing in the statement of intent, if you go through it, that suggests that every policy is subject to a revision or a review as a result of the best of the ANC-led government of national unity. The agreement, though, is that where there are policy fissures or differences, or any other matter where there are disputes, a dispute resolution mechanism will be developed. And such a dispute resolution mechanism has been developed through the establishment of what is known as the GNU clearinghouse, where matters, for example, that are in the Bella Act are being threshed out there, where matters concerning the national health insurance are being addressed there. If the DA feels very strongly about our our international relations and cooperation policy, then the onus is on them to table that before other parties in the GNU for that to be processed and established whether it belongs there or not. But
Okay,
we can't muzzle the president from being the president and representing South Africans.
Okay, which means the DA, by its very nature, in terms of my understanding of what you just said, they would have to respond after the event as opposed to before the event, because they can't be the architect of a document that comes from government, and they think that may be the case. Right, we've got 30 seconds remaining. Just a quick thought here. What does this say? Sorry, my apology. What does this say about where the two major parties of the GNU are headed? And you've got 30 seconds.
Yes, we remain committed to the government of national unity for stability, for sound governance in South Africa, and more importantly, for accelerated service delivery. That is where the ANC is at.
Okay, and that's where we're going to leave it. Mahlengu Bangu Motsiri, appreciate your time, the ANC's national spokesperson. So what do you think as the audience? Where does this leave the GNU? Where does this leave the two dominant parties of the GNU? Whether you like it or not, they are the two dominant parties. Where does this leave them talking to each other and to others too?
Fizzy drinks and fruit juices are making our kids sick. Sugar is dumped into their bodies with every sip, leading to obesity, heart disease, and diabetes as they get older. We need to protect our kids from all sugary drinks. Demand a stronger health promotion levy now. Sign the petition on heala.org. That's HEALA.org.
Get ready for the biggest night in South African music. Tune in to SABC1 on the 2nd of November at 8 p.m. for the 30th South African Music Awards, celebrating our finest local talent. Catch the yellow carpet action from 6 p.m. and join us as we honor the legends and voices that shape our sound. For more info, visit samusicawards.co.za. Hashtag Less Noise, More Music. Hashtag Summer 30 in partnership with the SABC. The SAFM University Debate Challenge will be taking over the Western Cape. Join us for the 1-hour debate on This Week Today with Oliver Dixon. from 6 to 7 p.m. on Friday, the 25th of October 2024 at the SABC Cape Town M1 Studios, where the University of Cape Town will be taking on the University of the Western Cape in what promises to be a nail-biting debate. The SAFM University Debate Challenge is an independent, non-partisan progressive initiative seeking to develop confident communicators, critical thinkers, and empowered global citizens. RSVP to info@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
Well, if you think we just have problems in our country and that's it, you have got to be joking. As part of the Global Watch feature, we're going to keep an eye on things going on in the DRC. With me is Nixon Katembo, who's the African Affairs commentator at Channel Africa, which forms part of the African arm of the SABC. Right, Nixon, appreciate your time as always. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Ashraf.
Thank you. Right, now we are speaking to you because I understand there's a proposal that's come from the president of the DRC regarding constitutional change that is quite significant. Tell me about it.
Well, there are a number of issues that we need to know. The constitution of the DRC contextually is a result or a byproduct of warring parties, rebel groups which came together to have a negotiated settlement that led to the first democratic election in the country. So the crafting of the constitutions emanate from the interest of these various rebel groups. Although the civil society were included, however, it left some area of concern for constitutional development, which in essence has not occurred. However, it is very interesting that now politicians are coming to think about the changing of that particular constitution in a context where the country is facing serious challenge in terms of security, in terms of economic development, and even in terms of human security and social development. So that's one aspect. The second aspect, look at the crafting of the constitution itself. Certain articles leave certain vulnerability in the running the institution of the state, but also leaving room for people to wiggle out for their own political interest. Mm-hmm. And this is where issues are really coming up, where you have President Tshisekedi saying, no, but we need to amend the constitution. The question is, to what end? Is it for the benefit of the DRC as a whole and its people, or he's looking at his own political ambitions?
I suppose it'll help knowing what he wants to amend. What does he want to amend?
Yeah. What he wants to amend, to all the circle that we have heard of, is the term limit. One, from removing the term limit in the constitutional framework. The second one is to extend the number of years of term limits in terms of 5 to 7 years. So you have that trend that have emerged in the context of the Great Lakes region, which started with, for example, with Uganda. President Museveni removing the term limits after winning the election of 2001, where he contested the opposition leader, his former person, Dr. Kizza Besigye. And we see the same trend happening in Rwanda with President Paul Kagame, and then later in these past elections, they reverted back to the old framework of 5 years and 2-term limit. But those term limits had been reviewed in Rwanda to become 7 years, and then from 7 years to have a no-term limit for that matter.
Okay, yeah. So it's all ultimately, I mean, only someone who wants to entrench himself or herself in power would want to do that, right?
Certainly. But on substantive issues, for example, in part of the DRC, you look at, for example, Article 50 and Article 51, which gives a certain right to the minorities. But the question is, who are the minority in the DRC? Because the DRC have got over 400 tribe and ethnic groups, both of which can claim minority rights. And you have Article 51 in the very same article guaranteeing those minority right to defend themselves and protect themselves in whichever sense. That's why you see the issue of Banyamulenge actually arising from the very constitution. But if you go back again to Article 207, if not 205, if I'm not mistaken, it gives the right of the DRC. The DRC Parliament can sit and decide on certain level of international national sovereignty to be interfered with the African institutions, in other words, the African Union, to decide on a part of the DRC's sovereignty.
Where do you think this will play out then? Because what has been the reaction so far, and where will this play out?
So far, I think what the president did yesterday is to prepare the national psyche, to say like we are going to take this route. At what are the nitty-gritty or the revelation of what aspect of the constitution they are going to deal with, I think it's a matter that we are going to watch in the next coming years.
But can he do it on his own?
Obviously, he can't do it on his own. First, it has to start with his party, which have already, those discussions have been within his own party. And you can see that this is a president, in my view, who wants to entrench himself into power. And that is going to be a challenge, because former President Joseph Kabila tried to do that by extending his rule for over 2 years. And you had a constitutional impasse, which led to the current arrangement that brought President
Okay, let's wrap up just finally. The Mozambican election results being released as we talk. What can you tell us about that very quickly?
Well, I think it is a test for democracy in the SADC region, but also a room for improvement in the democratic institution in Mozambique. We know that the history of Mozambique is interlinked to our history in the country here in South Africa, but also the security of Mozambique as well as the economic development of both Mozambique and the SADC region are interlinked. Whatever happened in Mozambique in terms of insecurity or instability or economic development have either a positive or a negative impact for the whole region.
And very quickly, what do you think is likely to happen in terms of result?
There might be contestation of the results, as already we have seen. However, it's up to the Mozambique state institutions, and here the separation of power that have been set out with the Mozambican constitution to deal with those issues, and for the opposition, if they are going to contest, to bring substantive issues and matters to the constitutional court in Mozambique to test the veracity.
I have a feeling we'll be
evidence.
talking about this soon. Thank you very much for your time. Much appreciated. Lots to consider, the DRC and then our neighbors, Mozambique. Nixon Katemba, appreciate your time. Much appreciated. Let's get the news headlines now. Just going 5:30. Here's Madupi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ashraf, and a very good afternoon. In your headlines at 3:30, 3 people have been shot and killed on the N3 Pinetown bound just after the Sherwood off-ramp on the west of Durban. Traffic there has been severely affected in that area. 7 suspects have been arrested for allegedly issuing fraudulent driving licenses in 2 provinces. 2 were arrested in Petersburg in the Free State and 5 others in the Northern Cape. And the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is meeting Qatari leaders in Doha as he continues his efforts to secure a ceasefire in Gaza. Details of these and other stories, 4 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, Eskom Pahleli Drive northbound in Pretoria has delays towards Moot Street. In Bedfordview, the N3 southbound slow moving towards Van Buren Road, and the N12 R24 westbound slow moving on both routes towards Giluli's interchange. Cedar Road eastbound in Fourways slow moving towards Uranium Street, and the N1 southbound in Sunninghill has a stationary truck reported near Rivonia Road. In KZN, the M4 northbound queuing towards Virginia Airport, the N2 south southbound is queuing towards Spaghetti Junction. The N3 westbound has a police incident reported before Spaghetti Junction. The N3 eastbound in Ashburton queuing at Linfield Park. The N2 southbound in Mpangeni has queuing trucks reported near the R102 exit, and Umgeni Road is slow moving through Springfield Park. In Cape Town, the M3 southbound queuing towards Rhodes Drive. The N1 outbound has ramp closure reported, no access to Lower Church Street. The N7 Jakes Havel Drive southbound slow moving towards Voortrekker Road, and Victoria Road outbound slow moving through Woodstock. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
Right, Tumi, let's talk about a victory.
Yes, so we start off with cricket. A very good afternoon to you. Well, Proteas stand-in captain Aiden Markram says that winning SA's first test win in the subcontinent is a special moment for the team after a 7-wicket win against Bangladesh. Now, SA ended a decade-long drought in the Indian subcontinent with this win, and the victory moved South Africa up to 4th in the World Test Championship standings, positioning them firmly for a shot at the final in 2025.
Yeah, I think it's special. Like you mentioned, a pretty young group or slightly inexperienced group to come to the subcontinent and get a win is great for us and the environment. So creates a nice buzz in the change room and gives us a bit of belief that we can compete in conditions that are where the odds are maybe seem to be stacked against us.
So a big congratulations to the Proteas, and looking forward to seeing what else they can do when it comes to this test format. In football, African champions Banyana take on the red and white of Denmark tomorrow night in the first ever international match between the two countries. South Africa are using this match as part of the preparations for the 2025 Women's Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers earlier next year. The match will be played at 6 p.m. at Denmark, and head coach Dr. Desiree Ellis says that the main objective of this match is to get back into the swing of international football.
We all know what we're preparing for. It's the WAFCON, and I think everybody needs to raise their hands. Look, we've always been a team that has been defensively sound, and we want to go back to being that team that is well organized. We know we're going to create opportunities, and obviously we need to start putting more shots on target. If you put more shots on target, you have more opportunities to score, but it's all about the performance. I think the performance will bring a good result, because sometimes you can play badly and still win, but we have to look at improved performances all the time because we're preparing for something bigger. So the big thing, we'll look at the performance, all-round performance in how we set ourselves up and according to the game plan, and then everything works itself out from there.
Still staying with football, Ethiopia say that they're still interested in hosting the Africa Cup of Nations finals in 2029, using the Confederation of African Football's Congress in Addis Ababa to press their candidacy. Now, Ethiopia currently do not have a stadium suitable for use in international competition, but they have committed to constructing a minimum of 6 stadiums around the country for a future of Cup of Nations hosting. In the meantime, the CAF Awards will be hosted in the tourist city of Marrakech on the 16th of December. This is the 3rd time in a row that Morocco is hosting the ceremony after a glittering star-studded African fanfare last year. Now, the CAF Awards recognize exceptional performances in both club and national competitions, culminating in the prestigious titles of the CAF African Player of the Year in both the men's and the women's categories. In rugby, Springbok Women's Centre Kumisa Kawe is excited that they will face newcomers Brazil in the 2025 Women's Rugby World Cup opening match. World Cup Rugby on Tuesday released the World Cup fixtures list, and the Boks have been drawn in Pool D alongside France, Italy and the Brazilians. And Kawe says that the team is determined to fly the SA flag high.
It is exciting, and I'm looking forward to playing against them. It will also be our first time playing against Brazil, which is exciting. It is all about teamwork and working very hard as a team. We trust our coaches, and we are determined to win.
Finally, in tennis, Novak Djokovic has withdrawn from next week's Paris Masters. Djokovic is still in contention to qualify for the season-ending ATP Finals in Turin next month. On that note, it's a wrap from my side for now.
So you were saying what first win for South Africa in a test match in how long?
In the subcontinent.
Yeah.
I think the last time they won it was back in 2014.
Is that because it's so difficult or because they're hardly playing test matches?
They're hardly playing test matches,
Which
I
is
think.
a huge problem.
It's a huge problem, but things are looking good, especially just looking at that World Test Championship standings. Obviously, you want South Africa to be there in the final next year, so slowly but surely shaping up.
I promise you, if I asked you, well, maybe you'll know the answer. If I asked the listener, it's like, who played in the last World Test Championship final? And if you ask me that, I also can't tell you. That answers the question. Right? More sport in an hour.
Andile, the CEO of a multinational corporation, is driving home with his daughter.
Dad, why is the tooth fairy so stingy?
Stingy? Well, she makes sure everyone gets something.
Does everyone at your company get something?
Yes, they're covered by Old Mutual Corporate's employee benefits.
Even Abdul.
Of course, he gets retirement benefits.
And Sisampo on that big machine.
She gets group risk cover if that big machine hurts her.
Wow, that's amazing, Dad.
Visit oldmutual.co.za/employee benefits and go from questions to solutions for your employees with Old Mutual Corporate. Old Mutual Life Assurance Company SA Limited is a licensed FSP and life insurer. T's and C's apply.
So why should I use We Buy Cars if I want to sell my vehicle?
Because We Buy Cars buys cars.
But will I get the right price?
Of course. We Buy Cars buys thousands of vehicles and knows exactly what every vehicle is worth. Their buyers deliver exceptional service and pay you immediately.
And how do I know what they'll pay for my vehicle?
It's easy. Visit webuycars.co.za or use the We Buy Cars app. Follow the simple steps and voila, you'll know your car's value in no time. We Buy Cars. Quick, easy, the best.
16 teams of Mzansi Africa's Elite League are back to the battlefield, Namandla Masha. They all believe Ukutukuzoba right, Kube bright, as they navigate the path to the final. This is the second edition of the Carlin Knockout Cup. Fagukesi! Catch the unmatched passion and drama of Ipolala Mzansi, the Carlin Knockout Cup, live on SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. Also available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Right, in fact, I'm going to get to Colin in a second. Here's a comment from Anonymous saying, Ashraf, what the president of the DRC wants to do smells like Mnangagwa's 2030 playing out in the DRC too. Right, would you like to comment on the two issues we've touched on? In fact, the DRC, the election in Mozambique next door to us, the constitutional change in the DRC, and certainly the ongoing issue regarding the DA and the ANC in terms of who says what regarding the president and Russia, and perhaps the other thing, the developments in coming out of the BRICS summit, particularly around all those 30-odd nations now coming together. There's some serious muscle there, and then beyond that issue of de-dollarization, and then maybe the establishment of a BRICS currency. Oh my goodness, things are changing. 086 000 20322. You can send us a voice note or text via WhatsApp 0614 104 107. Colin in Cape Town, go for it.
Hello, Ashraf. Ashraf, you know something? You must take more phone calls, man. The listeners are starved of phone calls.
Colin, let me just explain, and I think you need to just understand this. We have like 4 or 5 different shows, and some shows, like Kathy's show, for example, is very much styled around many phone calls and less shorter interviews. Current affairs shows like this one, including the one that the breakfast show in the morning, those are very much short, fast-paced driven interviews. So we do take callers like yourself, but what we do as well is they have to be shorter compared to the mornings and the evenings. It's a reality. It's a time issue. But go for it.
Because the regular listeners that used to phone in months and years ago, I don't hear them anymore. I think they've given up. But anyway, Ashraf.
Well, we have plenty callers and WhatsApps, I can assure you of that. But I mean, you calling in now, don't lose the opportunity. Yeah. Go ahead and tell us.
Tell me, this Ramaphosa, he spoke about in Russia. You know, he spoke about world peace and all those things. But he never mentioned what is going on in Sudan, the DRC, and even the Ukraine. he just focused on Israel. You know, that was very, very unfair. Unfair, because if you want world peace, you talk about where all the wars are, in Africa, especially in Africa, and things like that. He never mentioned things like that.
Okay, so you think he's been selective, yeah?
Yes, he's been selective. That's definitely. He's been, because
All right.
he's in Russia now. And that is very, very unfair, biased. And another thing to Ashraf, you know, the poor DA gets picked on such a lot on your show. And you know, the other day I was listening to ex-mayor Al-Jamal. There was nothing. You mentioned only that he stepped down. There was no interrogation, no getting him on the radio to talk about it or nothing like that. You know, to me it's very, very unfair.
Hold it. But when you say picked on, I don't understand what you mean by picked on. And when you're saying Al-Jamal, nobody asked him questions. Are you saying there's no pullback? And by the way, we've got the text of the full speech from Ramaphosa, includes Sudan, by the way, just so that you know that. So I would suggest, Colin, you also check your facts out as well before you pronounce what you're saying on the air.
I'm talking about his speech. I'm talking about his speech that he spoke about now.
I am talking about that. Yeah. All right, but we're gonna. I'm talking. No. You mentioned Sudan as well, not just Ukraine. You mentioned Sudan. Okay, we're going to move on. Colin, thanks for that point of view. I tell you what, there are many, many different views on many issues, and we certainly cover every one of them here on the National Pulse. Right, there's more to come, including, by the way, the BRICS Summit right after this.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, so lots of developments certainly on the BRICS Summit, right? So earlier today, the president, South Africa's president, Ramaphosa, spoke to delegates or told delegates at the BRICS Summit that South Africa welcomes the Russian initiatives that are aimed at strengthening a number of the BRICS countries through the various networks aimed at improving the future of the BRICS countries, their transport networks and connectivity. I mean, that's not all. There were many other issues as well. I thought, let's do this. Let's get some an update on what developed today and maybe late yesterday with Khayelitsha Khumalo from the SABC News International Desk. Appreciate your time, Khayelitsha. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Ashraf, and good afternoon to you and your listeners as well.
Thank you. Right. So perhaps in bullet point form, maybe over the last 24 hours, what is being discussed?
Well, obviously, I mean, it's been quite interesting today. As you know, that whenever hosting countries having this session, what they do is that they always invite what they consider friendly nations and also their partners as well, governmental organizations to come through. So the very same case in Russia, it's really happened today where a number of countries, of course, Central Asia, close to Russia, and many others as well, including Turkey as well, with Recep Tayyip Erdogan as well attending, but also a lot of them really emphasizing the situation around the reforms, talking about all these important issues, including climate change, that it's quite important for them to prioritize the issues around sustainable development. But also, Ashraf, I think what has been really interesting, a very unwavering statements from the BRICS, these BRICS plus partners really dominated as well is the current situation in the Middle East. And obviously, as you recall last year, there was a virtual session where the leaders also raised the concern about the current situation in the Middle East, where they were calling for a permanent ceasefire, but also for that two-state solution for Israel and Palestine states to coexist and also live side by side.
Okay, what about the issue of the de-dollarization and perhaps this new BRICS currency that came up that was being discussed late yesterday? I mean, can you tell us more about that?
Well, very much so, Ashraf. So that has been really a very dominant issue, really just to quote the Russian President Vladimir Putin. They call it alternative payment system. So really so that they don't really rely so much on the US dollar, but they do understand that, you know, given the current situation now, all these institutions, mainly they do use the US dollar. But when President Putin had a bilateral meeting with his Chinese counterpart, President Xi Jinping, there was a clear admission that when you look at the trade between these two countries, they mainly now use their own local currencies, obviously to avoid the geopolitical tension. Ashraf, as you know, that Russia really is facing quite an enormous pressure when you look at the current sanctions that have been leveled against the Kremlin. So this is also a very important instrument for them to sort of dodge the impact, so to speak, of these sanctions. But also even the South African president saying that BRICS does have a potential to be this force to be reckoned with the multipolar world, where also there's so much happening. But also something that has been really raised quite often here by the BRICS leaders, Ashraf, is around what they call unlawful and coercive measures. They also say these are very illegal sanctions. But also another very important issue around also the future pandemics, where they say there should be a lot of collaboration amongst the BRICS countries with their own institutions to deal with these pandemics, and obviously emanating from COVID-19 lessons.
Which then brings me on to this next issue, which is the issue that was discussed last year already when the BRICS summit was held in South Africa, which is, ultimately, when all this plays out to the level that it should, right, especially now that we have like 30 plus countries that are, if not the main members, but they're certainly part of it, are we seeing the formation of a new world order?
I think by all means, Ashraf. I think the indicators are there, judging by all the statements that the leaders have, and also just almost this growing interest where so many countries are saying this is a very interesting time where you have these geopolitical shifts, but also so many countries yearning to be part and parcel of this influential bloc. But obviously, you do have the experts who are saying, obviously, there are some certain areas of weaknesses, because when you look at how BRICS work, for example, they say it doesn't have a formal secretariat, so it depends on the country that is hosting it to really run everything, to have these preceding activities, whether you're looking at the BRICS Council, where the business community would have these meetings, where they sort of galvanize these investments, where they talk about a number of things. But also, by all accounts, I think what is very interesting as well, what came out as well, for example, you had the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres also having an opportunity to speak out as well, really talking about a number of issues as well, coming from the UN General Assembly, where he spoke about some of the aspirations and the ideals of the summits that was held recently in New York, talking about this world that is envisaged, but also talking about issues that are really known around eradication of poverty, around the issue of climate change. As you know, that Azerbaijan is getting ready for the climate change summit, dubbed as COP29, but really it really shows that there's quite a lot happening, and there's a very clear understanding. For example, I think IMF as well, and so many other bodies as well, they're really keeping a close eye on these key developments.
And maybe lastly, as we get to the close of the BRICS summit, is there any one single unanswered question?
I think obviously, Ashraf, for example, you know that Russia is currently engaging on this full-scale war with Ukraine, its neighbor, obviously given their own insecurity issues that they've cited, but also they talk about the issue of saving some Russians, predominantly in the eastern parts of Ukraine. So they talk about the UN Charter that really spells out clear when you talk about sovereignty, the territorial integrity. So when you look at the war, obviously Russia, at some point, they carved out and really spoke about certain parts of Ukraine as part of now part of the Russian Federation, like Crimea, for example, the peninsula. So a lot of experts are saying it's really questionable, because obviously somebody should really call out Russia and say,
I'm going to leave it at
really
that.
Just say the UN Charter.
And that's where we're going to leave it. Thank you. Much appreciate your time. I'm going to have to go on that issue of the BRICS Summit.
Hey there! Need to know your TV license balance but don't want to wait? No sweat! Just send a quick SMS with your ID or TV license number to 44210. Remember, standard SMS rates apply. And presto! Your balance pops right up anytime, anywhere. It's as easy as pie. So why procrastinate? Give it a try and get your info in a flash. T's and C's apply.
SAFM will be hosting its annual Breast Cancer Awareness Roundtable on The Talking Point with Kathy Mutlatlana on Wednesday, the 30th of October 2024 at the Birchwood Hotel and Conference Center in Boksburg. For an opportunity to join the roundtable, email your name and surname to info@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Right, the Nelson Mandela Museum, in partnership with the University of Johannesburg and the National Liberation Heritage Institute of South Africa, right? Well, they will jointly host the 3rd edition of the African Liberation Heritage Indaba. This event will take place on the 28th, 29th of October, so it's imminent, right? And it's going to happen at UJ, right? Looking forward to that. And the theme will be around the issue of 30 years of freedom, what has become of heritage assets and repatriation in South Africa. The Indaba aims to bring together former liberation movements in South Africa, academics, researchers, social activists and students to dialogue on topical and pertinent issues that are facing the African continent. The big question to you is, are you not one of them?
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
So much more to come, and we'll certainly pick up on some of the big developing stories of the day. But let's now talk about the concerns of the South African Poultry Association. Isaac Breitenbach is with me, the CEO of the South African Poultry Association. Isaac, appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Now, we are talking to you, I understand, because your organization will submit an application for VAT-free chicken products to Parliament. Give me the motivation behind that.
I think that the timing is right to do that. President Ramaphosa, in his address to the nation, mentioned that he's concerned about food security for the population. He's also concerned about malnutrition of people in the lower income brackets that doesn't have the access to animal proteins. So that makes it the right time to talk about this. If we talk about food insecurity, since we had COVID, that actually deteriorated. And it deteriorated because of financial reasons. And this is the appropriate time for the industry then to talk to Treasury and ask to exempt chicken from VAT.
Okay, and the overall motivation would be around that, just the issue of high costs of poultry. Is that it, right?
Two things. The first thing is obviously the high cost of poultry. We are the first go-to meat protein that people would consume. But also, secondly to that is malnutrition. We find that a lot of people in the lower income brackets do not have access to poultry or not access to enough poultry meat to be nutritionally sufficient for the person. And if we exempt chicken from VAT, it will certainly give more chicken to people that buy chicken, but it will also put chicken in the basket of people that hasn't had the money before to buy chicken.
All right. What's the plan then in terms of, I understand the submission, but do you have any sense of whether this proposal or the submission will be accepted?
Yes, and we also did a submission in 2018, and there were really a couple of concerns why it wasn't allowed in 2018, and we will address those. The very first one, and an important one, would be the definition of the products that we would like to be exempted from VAT. The industry is not asking for exemption of all chicken from VAT because some of the chicken is consumed by the higher income groups. And we ended up defining with a definition for chicken that we believe will not cause misabuse of the definition for VAT-free once it's implemented. And we will then ask for VAT to be exempted on all frozen bone-in meat as well as secondary products. In other words, chicken livers, hearts, and things like that. And that was a big concern for Treasury in the past. A second one was obviously it comes at a cost to the fiscus, and by not having every single chicken portion in this particular basket, that will reduce materially.
Well, I think that's a good point. So in fact, what you're saying, the more luxury types of chicken may not be VAT exempt, but certainly the more basic one would certainly be exempt as per your proposal, right? Because, I mean, the flip side of that would be that if there's a VAT exemption, many companies may take advantage of the drop in VAT or the reduction to actually increase their price because they know that people are used to paying at a certain price in certain areas.
Absolutely. We believe that a product like a boneless chicken is not consumed by the low-income people. And definitely fresh product is also consumed by the higher LSM people. So we wouldn't put those in the basket for obvious reasons. And then we must give through the price benefit to the consumer. And I believe that will happen. Chicken is very price sensitive. Retailers are really keeping us honest in terms of pricing. And we believe that full 15% will go through to the consumer.
Okay, let's hope that may be the case. Let's leave it at that. Isak Breitenbach, the CEO of the South African Poultry Association. This because they plan sometime next year to submit its application, in fact next month, not next year, so imminently, right, for VAT-free chicken products. They will make that submission. Now that could be quite significant. I wonder what you make of that. Let's hear your voice notes, 0614-104-107, and get your text messages out as well, and you can do the same on social media. I tell you what, talking about voice notes, here's another on like the topic of the month every day. It's GNU.
Good day, Ashraf. Pizzo here in Hartswater. Ashraf, the idea of government of national unity came from DA. They approached ANC based on some threats to the president, especially on Palapala. If it was not because of Palapala, we could have never had government of national unity. Thank you.
Okay, that's one. I wonder whether you think that's true. I mean, that it's actually come from them. Is it as simple as that? You see, the flip side of that is that if it's as simple as that, it almost suggests that the ANC has got no teeth and they just don't have any muscle. And yet, to be fair to the ANC, if you listen, if anybody thought that an ANC DA-led GNU would mean that they will be like Peli, as we say, right? Well, I'll tell you what. Just about every day there are examples that they're not pally, that they agree on many things, that they learn to work together, and the key word is learn to work together in consultation, but in fact they differ every single day, and that does play out, okay? So either that can be seen in a negative or it can be seen in a positive to say whoever thought that those two parties will be co-opted by each other, well, that clearly ain't the case. It's 4 o'clock. Here's Madupi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Garda. The top stories, yet another suspected school food poisoning incident and arrests over a fake driver's license scam. Very good afternoon. 24 pupils from Enzani Primary in Matsulu, outside Mbombela in Mpumalanga, have been rushed to hospital after complaining of abdominal pains and vomiting. It's alleged that the pupils consumed some snacks that they bought from a spaza shop. The Provincial Education Department says it is concerned about the incidence of food poisoning at schools. It says it is awaiting a report from the Health Department, which will confirm what caused the children to fall sick. 3 people have been shot and killed on the N3 Pinetown bound just after the Sherwood off-ramp on the west of Durban. Traffic has been severely affected in the area. It's believed that 2 people were found with gunshot wounds inside their vehicle, while the third was found a few meters away. ALS paramedics spokesperson Gareth Jemison.
2 vehicles had actually been involved in a collision, and on closer examination had found that 2 occupants in the vehicle that crashed into a second vehicle had sustained fatal gunshot wounds to their upper bodies. Unfortunately, there was nothing more paramedics could do for them, and they're declared deceased at the scene. A third male, believed to be in his 20s, was also found some distance away from the vehicle, lying in the verge. He too had sustained fatal gunshot wounds and was declared deceased at the scene.
7 suspects have been arrested for allegedly issuing fraudulent driving licenses in 2 provinces. 2 men were arrested in Pietersburg in the Free State and 5 in the Northern Cape. The operation uncovered a web of corruption at the Koffiefontein and Pietersburg driver's licensing testing centers in the Free State, as well as Kimberley in the Northern Cape. Police also discovered a house that the syndicate used as an office in Pietersburg, which is owned by one of the arrested suspects. The Road Traffic Management Corporation's Anti-Corruption Unit and the police are currently raiding the offices of the Traffic License Department in Kimberley. A man has been sentenced to 10 life terms and an additional 60 years imprisonment in the Mtubatuba High Court in northern KZN. 38-year-old Sfiso Gumede was found guilty of multiple crimes, including 10 counts of rape and 4 of robbery with aggravating circumstances. Investigations date the crimes back to 2014. Gumede, who mainly targeted women, was arrested in 2022. Provincial Police spokesperson Robert Netsiunda.
Gumede, who had established himself as a feared Mpangan serial rapist, started his raping spree in 2014, where he raped 4 women in 3 months, 1 each in July and August, as well as 2 victims in September of that year. He then continued to rape women until December 2022, before police caught up with him. This convicted rapist will target women who were working alone in Mpangan and will rape them either at knife or gunpoint. His youngest victim was a 17-year-old girl whom he raped in 2021, and the eldest was a 29-year-old woman.
And U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is meeting Qatari leaders in Doha as he continues his efforts to secure a ceasefire in Gaza. Meanwhile, the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas said today that Israel aims to empty the Gaza Strip of Palestinians, especially in the northern parts, where it has launched a sweeping assault this month. More from the BBC's Tom Bateman.
The leadership in Doha have been key brokers, really, in trying to establish this ceasefire for hostage release deal. But since the Israelis killed the Hamas leader in Gaza, Yahya Sinwar, the question now is, what is going on with the Hamas leadership? Is there anyone to talk to? We know that Hamas, for example, have said that there is now a 5-man kind of leadership council, that they might keep the identity of the next leader secret for security reasons. So that doesn't bode well for progress in trying to hammer out this deal.
The top story at 4 o'clock, 24 pupils from Enzani Primary in Matsulu, outside Mbombela in Mpumalanga, have been rushed to hospital after complaining of abdominal pains and vomiting. For SAFM News, Kimudupi Makhalemeli.
Because I'm attending. And coming up in your sports this hour, SASCOC set to elect new board in November, and Lowe takes charge of Rigid Bulls. More details at 4:30.
If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable for you. Whether it's a civil, criminal, or labor-related matter, we have a nationwide panel of attorneys standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195 and we'll call you back. Clientele General is a licensed non-life insurer and an authorized FSP. Standard rates and terms and conditions apply.
Toulouse have a concrete plan to triumph and maintain their top spot. Meanwhile, 4th position Toulon have set their minds on a win to pressurize the 3 teams above them. This is the Top 14. Witness the incredible action, the Top 14 rugby encounter between log leaders Toulouse and RC Toulon. This Sunday, 27 October at 10 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also, available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Namibia and Seychelles both want their presence felt when they meet at 12 midday, while Mzansi's Banyana confront neighbors Eswatini at 3 p.m. This is the doubleheader of the Hollywood Bets COSAFA Women's Championship. Catch both matches on Friday, 25 October, live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound in central Johannesburg is slow moving towards Crown Interchange. The N1 southbound in Sunninghill has a stationary truck reported near Rivonia Road, and Santon Drive westbound is slow moving towards Winnie Mandela Drive. In KZN, the M13 in Hillcrest is queuing near Kasir Road. The M4 northbound is queuing towards Glen Ashley. The N2 southbound is queuing towards Spaghetti Junction. And on the N3 westbound, a police incident reported before Spaghetti Junction, causing heavy delays. In Cape Town, the N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard outbound queuing towards Hospital Bend. The N1 outbound is slow moving towards the M5 Kuburg interchange. Victoria Road outbound is slow moving through Woodstock, and Main Road is slow moving in the Cork Bay area. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
What for you moves the National Pulse today? What are the biggest issues that really gets you thinking, that gets your blood boiling as well, I would think, isn't it? One way or the other. You certainly can tell me. 086 000 2032. My name is Ashraf Garda. This is the National Pulse. You can also connect via WhatsApp in text or voice note form 0614 104 107, and you can post comments on our social media pages. We'll connect shortly, play some of the key clips from the speech of the Premier of Gauteng, Panyaza Lesufi, from the Gauteng Local Government Turnaround Summit. Before I, however, get to that, right, that conversation I had with Colin, I thought, Colin, if you're listening in, I mean, just to clarify exactly what the President said, right? So he spoke about Gaza, he spoke about Palestine, and I won't go into all of that at this point in time because that's not the conversation. He did say, however, the world cannot afford a region-wide escalation of the conflict, okay? However, he went on to say, and this is important, South Africa has been unwavering in advocating for a two-state solution, and the key word here is two-state, and that would see an independent Palestinian state along the borders set out in 1967, with East Jerusalem as its capital. This would be in line with the UN resolutions, international law, and internationally agreed parameters. Then he moved on to talk about other issues of what he called spiraling conflicts, right? And he said, on our own continent, Sudan, I'll repeat, Sudan enters its second year of horrific conflict and devastation. This is another conflict the world seems to have forgotten about. The protracted conflicts in the Sahel and the Great Lakes region in Africa persist. So not just Sudan, Sahel region, West Africa, that is, and the Great Lakes around the DRC, right? We must find lasting solutions to all these conflicts. And then finally, in broad speak, he said, Ramaphosa that is, we must remain committed to the peaceful resolution of all disputes through negotiation and inclusive dialogue. We must safeguard the ability of states to pursue independent foreign policy. We must safeguard the multilateral system because it is the cornerstone of international relations and foster an environment of peace and development. Existing global institutional mechanisms need to be both strengthened and reformed to play a constructive role in international peace and security. We cannot allow conflicts to continue in perpetuity. We need to find paths to peace. In our quest for a more interconnected, just and prosperous world, we have the ability to foster an environment of peace through a focus on sustainable development. And then finally he says, we must continue to support nations and peoples who seek to end the cycle of conflict and choose the path of peace. So he said a lot more, Colin, than you claimed he said. Yes, he did not use the word Ukraine, but I think he spoke about many other regions in broad speak. And personally, I think you can't really fault him for that in terms of the commitment to peace and negotiated settlements in many parts of the world. Right, your comments on that are most welcome. Let's then move on to the Gauteng Local Government Turnaround Summit. So today being day 2 of the summit, the mayors of the different municipalities presented the general state of the respective municipalities. Yesterday, the Gauteng Premier, Panyaza Lesufi, spoke about the state of the province, looking at water, electricity, infrastructure, and other challenges. So we thought, you know what, what he said needs to be punctuated. So let's do that. Firstly, we're going to play this clip about, well, from the Premier, where he talks about the challenges facing Gauteng, and he calls it a big snake with 4 heads.
The situation and immediately respond to these challenges that are faced by our people. I can summarize it by saying we are confronted by a big snake that has 4 heads. One head is the salaries of workers. Another head is the challenges of Eskom. Another head is rent water. And the last head is service delivery. If we can't confront this snake and ensure that our municipalities can at least handle these 4 issues of paying the salaries of their workers, paying Eskom for the electricity that we use, paying rent water for the water that we utilize, and servicing our people through service delivery. It is within this context that the Gauteng provincial government adopted an approach that we said is an accelerated model to reposition Gauteng and ensure that we grow the economy of Gauteng together. We adopted 5 important points that we want to share with you this morning, so that when we intervene in local government, you understand why we want to intervene and intervene with speed.
Right, so that's the one. But he says more, right? He then spoke on the quality of life survey released earlier this week by the Gauteng City Region Observatory.
Yesterday, I had a difficult task of accepting a report titled Quality of Life Survey, Views of the Citizens of Gauteng. Of all the 7 areas that have been surveyed, there is no single area that the citizens of this province have given it to government. They've raised the limitations that they go through, the pain that they have to go through to access services. But what was more embarrassing, it was their collective decision that they've lost faith and confidence in any form of government, whether local government, provincial government, or national government. And that report paints a bleak picture about our province. From areas where people need to access services, to infrastructure development, and our response time to the complaints that they lodge, to such an extent that they've even lost hope to even lodge those complaints. As we gather here, we should set a tone to return this province and these municipalities back to the hands of our people, so that our people can be proud that indeed they are governing this province. In our different views, different areas of political activism, what was the common motivating factor was the day in which we said the people shall govern. That is not about us, it's about the people that need things, and it's about people that can select and elect their own leaders so that they can govern their lives.
Now, I often speak about, real transformation will occur in South Africa when our townships look like suburbs. So what is the state of Gauteng's townships?
Ladies and gentlemen, let's accept one thing. That we are now swimming in a pool of crisis. That we can collectively drown, or we can collectively swim to save our waters. We need to move away from talking into a much more action-orientated program that will immediately eliminate the frustration of our people. Where we come from, without any shade of doubt, our communities are dirty and smelly. Sewer is flowing free. Our people are walking in dusty streets. Sporting and community facilities are in shambles. Hostels are in bad state. We are confronted by aging infrastructure. Children are dying from expired food. Our graveyards are not maintained. And now we are facing the challenges of water and electricity.
And, of course, if there's no water, what does that mean for Christmas?
Colleagues, we held meetings with all your executive mayors, MMCs responsible for water, the CFOs. Rand Water is here, is going to give a presentation to the collective in some of the commissions. Colleagues, if we can't act on this issue of water in our province, a bleak Christmas is confronting our citizens. We received a detailed report from Rand Water in the presence of municipal managers, in the presence of CFOs, executive mayors. Rand Water declares that there is a limit national government gives them to go and get water from our dams. They've not only reached that limit, they've exceeded that limit. And there's no way that they can go and look for more water because it does not solve the problems that we have. They come back to us and declare that 33% of water get lost across the province. Get lost either through illegal connections, leakages, old infrastructure, that even if they can go and get extra water from the dams, from National Department of Water, reality is that they will get water to lose water. So we need to be creative, therefore. And this is the resolution that we have adopted, that we wanted to come to you and present it to you for adoption so that all of us will agree.
Right, what about the spaza shops?
We must agree as this particular province that there must be form of regulation for people to establish this installation in our communities. It can't be a free-for-all. That those that operate these particular businesses, there must be a form of accountability. And collectively out of this meeting, will agree for the strengthening and establishment of inspectors to ensure that expired food are not sold to our children, and that each and every spaza shop that is in our area must be appropriately registered.
Okay, there we are. Lots of commentary, certainly pronouncements. This is by the Premier of Gauteng Province. Right, do you have an opinion on that? I mean, how does that impact you in terms of what he's saying about his province? And as we talk, and I know this being a national platform, there are people from the other 8 provinces. What's the state of your province? Do you find that so much of what he's saying resonates with you? That means the problems that he's expressed and talked about, in fact, can be ditto your province, or are they just unique to Gauteng Province? And perhaps, if you concur with him, how do you fix up those provinces? How do you fix up your province? It's complex, and I'll tell you what, if we don't resolve that, if you can't fix up a community, you can't fix up the city, you don't fix up a province, well, clearly an entire country in this case will be broken. Let's talk about KZN's plans for a safer festive season campaign right after this.
And we went on a water safari, and Mom spotted a hippo, and it said, "Grrr."
There is a place where you can see wonder and the wild, with breathtaking scenery and endless landscapes. Enjoy good food and embrace great taste.
And the next day we went to the Reed Dance. I saw the maidens handing over reeds to the mighty Zulu king, and the Zulu warriors chanting, "Baye!"
Explore all this and more in the magical Zulu Kingdom.
This message is brought to you by KZN Tourism and Film Authority.
The SAFM University Debate Challenge will be taking over the Western Cape. Join us for the 1-hour debate on This Week Today with Oliver Dixon. from 6 to 7 p.m. on Friday, the 25th of October 2024 at the SABC Cape Town M1 Studios, where the University of Cape Town will be taking on the University of the Western Cape in what promises to be a nail-biting debate. The SAFM University Debate Challenge is an independent, non-partisan progressive initiative seeking to develop confident communicators, critical thinkers, and empowered global citizens. RSVP to info@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, so where there's one plan to fix up an entire province, there's another plan for just safety around the festive season. It's a big time for KZN province, we know that, and the festive season is very much upon us. Now, the KwaZulu-Natal Premier Thamsanqa Nculi spearheaded the launch of the Provincial Integrated Safer Festive Season campaign earlier today. That's at the Dr. J.L. Dube Stadium in Nanda. Let's find out more about what the plans are with the Premier. Appreciate your time. You are now connected to the National Pulse.
No, thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Good afternoon to yourself and to the listeners at home.
Thank you. I take it without repeating it, but it's the obvious that, it's critical that the KwaZulu-Natal province, in the build-up to the festive season, you've got to get it right regarding safety, don't you?
Exactly. In fact, it was an assurance to those who visit KwaZulu-Natal during the festive season, even the people who are living in KwaZulu-Natal, that we are on board in terms of ensuring that we provide safety measures to everyone. Hence, today we're launching this safer season, festive season for KwaZulu-Natal, with not only the police, but even with the private sector like business against crime, and even the security, private securities in the area, your neighborhood watch, your CPFs, wherein we're saying in particular we're starting here in eThekwini. Hence, we know that many people during the festive season they visit eThekwini, and we wanted to give an assurance that we are early in clearing up or cleaning in eThekwini, so that criminals will know that they don't have a place in eThekwini. Tourists will be safe, and people who must come and enjoy KwaZulu-Natal festive season.
Okay, so what then is the plan around a safer KZN?
Well, our plan is that we'll be working together. There will be a collaboration of the departments. Hence, you know that there is Department of Transport in the province, there is Metropolis, there is SAPS, there are neighborhood watch, as I've mentioned, there are private security, there are even those who are guarding the borders. We were actually putting together all our resources, and this is not just an event. There's much more we're going to see. The issue of technology, ensuring that the surveillance cameras, they are working for maintaining law and order in eThekwini Metro. However, we're also at the same time making a call to all districts in KwaZulu-Natal that the similar approach must be actually advanced, wherein all the sectors I've mentioned, they work together with the local government to ensure that KwaZulu-Natal is a place which is safe for the people of KwaZulu-Natal, even for the visitors.
Okay, can you give us some practical examples of the safer region? That means, what are you actually doing this time around?
We recently had the operation in Albert Park, in an area where it has been quite very difficult to drive through or to even walk through, wherein we were addressing the issue of the homeless, so as to take them to the shelters, those who are not well to the hospitals, and those who are actually criminals, who are having criminal cases that are running out of. The police were able to discover them. The wanted, in fact, they were able to be arrested, and the undocumented foreign nationals, 15, were discovered. And then they had to go through the process of being taken back to their countries. I think we have that was not the first operation we had. Even in the illegally occupied buildings, we went there and we discovered even some of the criminal activities, even the drug dealers. You see, the police and the Community Safety and Liaison Department, which is led by the Premier of KwaZulu-Natal, together with all the governments that are related to the operations, we have already started to work together towards ensuring that we present a safer province or a safer eThekwini for the people during the festive season.
So one thing is safety. When we talk about safety, we often think about crime only, but the reality is also the safety of the water. What's the update on Durban or the eThekwini region's water?
Soon I will be going to have agreed with His Worship the Mayor of eThekwini that I will come down to actually inspect the beaches and the swimming pools around eThekwini, so that I test whether we can give assurance. However, I am convinced that a lot has been done to address that. There is even the presidential working group in eThekwini that is working with us as federal government and also eThekwini Metro to try and address issues of the past that were reported. There is improvement, and people they are back in the beaches. Hence, I'm saying, you see, we'll be also launching that specifically to demonstrate that even ourselves we can live here, and people must come to the province of KwaZulu-Natal as they always do. During the festive season, during the glorious moments of eThekwini, people will flock down to eThekwini.
Provided the water's clean, right? So I think the big responsibility, we certainly wait to hear from what the mayor of the city of eThekwini says, because clearly if you don't have good seawater, that's it. Your tourist numbers will absolutely drop. Let's leave it at that, Premier Thamsanqa Ntuli, the KwaZulu-Natal Premier. Appreciate you giving off your time. Right, there's still a range of other issues we have that one will get you, the audience, raising. One of them is the issue of, the ongoing story of the DA and the ANC.
Good afternoon, Ashraf and the SAFM listeners. The DA money is becoming something else. And I think if they so much feel uncomfortable, why not just pull out of the GNU? And I think the ANC must consider negotiating with Malema, because the state of the EFF now, from a distance, you can see that is fragile. So I think the ANC must begin talks with the EFF. If the DA is so much uncomfortable, let them go. We are tired of these things. We want to move the country forward, and they keep pulling us backward. No, man. Slaelo, Polokwane.
Thanks for that, Lila. But I get a sense is maybe you should, that once the two parties, the ANC and the DA, decided to work together, for now, at least up to the next election, they can't sort of split each other apart. They would have to find a way, no matter how much they argue and there's public outbursts, they have to find a way to stick with each other. And that is why they are sticking with each other. Never mind daily pronouncements telling effectively you and I, why they should not stick together, but stick together they are. And my sense is they probably will, even down the line. 4:30, here's the news headlines with Madubi.
Uncle Ashraf, and good afternoon. In your headlines at 4:30, 24 pupils from Enzani Primary in Matsulu, outside Mbombela in Mpumalanga, have been rushed to hospital after complaining of abdominal pains and vomiting. The case against diamond dealer Louis Liebenberg, together with his wife Desiree and their 7 co-accused, has been postponed to the 31st of this month in the Bronkhorstspruit Magistrates Court outside Pretoria. And at least 17 Palestinians, including children, were killed in an Israeli strike on a school in the Nuseirat camp in the central part of the Gaza Strip, where people displaced by the fighting were sheltering. And those are your headlines. Greg will have your full update, 5 o'clock.
SAFM.
guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, Santon Drive westbound is slow moving towards Winnie Mandela Drive. The N1 southbound in Sunninghill has a stationary truck reported near Rivonia Road, and the M1 southbound in central Johannesburg slow moving towards Crown Interchange. In KZN, the N3 westbound has a police incident reported before Spaghetti Junction. The road's closed, causing heavy delays. The M4 northbound is queuing towards Virginia Airport. The N3 westbound in Pietermaritzburg has a stationary truck reported near Peter Brown Drive, and the N2 southbound in Mpangeni has queuing trucks reported near the R102 exit. In Cape Town, the M5 southbound is queuing towards Krombom Road exit, the M3 southbound queuing towards Rhodes Drive, the N7 Jakes Havel Drive southbound is slow moving towards Voortrekker Road, and the N1 outbound slow moving towards Okavango Road exit. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
Right, Tumi, let's talk about what's it, the controlling body, I think, of sport in the country in many ways, right? Sascot.
Absolutely. The South African Sports Confederation and Olympic Committee President Barry Hendricks has confirmed that the elections for a new board will be held on the 30th of November. Hendricks also announced his intention to run for a second term, expressing confidence in securing support from the various sports federations that will participate in the vote at the Olympic House in Rosebank. Now, the elections, which are held every 4 years, were scheduled during SASCOC's annual general meeting 3 weeks ago at its headquarters.
The elections take place on the 30th of November. The nominations forms have already been sent out by the Nominations Committee, an independent structure. The nominations close on the 31st of October. And then within 7 days, the Nominations Committee, through the Secretariat, the CEO, will announce who have put their hand up to stand for the organization.
Meanwhile, Hendricks says that he feels there is still unfinished business from his first term and is determined to stay on to implement the plans that he proposed 4 years ago.
So yes, there's so much work to be done in this organization. It is an honor and a privilege to stand by ensuring that it's done by independent organizations and by ensuring that we adhere to our own policies and procedures. It's really as simple as that.
In rugby, the Springboks have added hooker Johan Grobler and prop Wilco Louw to their squad for the year-end tour to the United Kingdom following an ankle injury to Jan-Hendrik Wessels. Wessels can play prop and hooker, which meant that the Boks called up 2 players after his withdrawal, increasing the Boks squad to 35. The Springboks will play tests against Scotland, England and Wales in November, with a training camp in Jersey starting on the 27th of October. Meanwhile, Ulrich Louw makes his return and takes over the captaincy of a Vodacom Bulls lineup featuring several changes to face Benetton tomorrow. Louw last played in round 4 of the Vodacom URC before being ruled out with a concussion, and this week he's back in a new look loose trio with veteran open side flank Marcel Coetzee and number 7 Reinhard Ludwig. In football, Manchester United will face Fenerbahce tonight in the Europa League with a growing list of unavailable players. Skipper Bruno Fernandes is ruled out through suspension after he was sent off against Porto, while veteran defender Johnny Evans is sidelined after suffering a problem in Saturday's win against Brentford. Mason Mount, Luke Shaw and Tyrell Malacia are still out, while Lenny Yoro has returned to training but won't be available for another few weeks. Kobe Mainu and Harry Maguire could return next week, and manager Erik ten Hag has admitted that the Red Devils will struggle to cope with any more injuries. Moving on to cricket, Rehan Ahmed and Jordan Cox have been added to England's white ball squad for the tour of the West Indies, which starts at the end of this month. Ahmed is playing in the ongoing 3rd test in Pakistan and will transfer directly from Rawalpindi to the Caribbean once the match is complete. Cox has not featured in the series and has been released immediately. He's expected to be available for all 3 ODIs, but not the subsequent T20 leg as he prepares for the next test trip to New Zealand. England played the first ODI on the 31st of October with Liam Livingstone set to captain the side for the first time in the absence of the injured Jos Buttler. In boxing, Tyson Fury says that that he will knock out Alexander Usyk in a rematch of the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world bout after losing his undefeated record to the Ukrainian. Usyk won a split decision on points when the pair first met in May and will battle again for the WBA, WBC and WBO titles in Riyadh on the 21st of December. Usyk remains unbeaten in his 22 professional bouts and took the opportunity to have some fun at Fury's expense in front of the cameras, saying that there is no way he will beat him. On that note, it's a wrap from my side for now.
Okay, anything you want to get off your chest just for now?
I think for me, I wanted to ask you, when someone is elected to be the president of an organization and you say in the next 4 years, I want to make sure that these things happen, and in those 4 years it doesn't happen, should we give you another chance? Like Barry Hendricks saying that he still wants to make sure that everything that he wanted to achieve is still going to happen in the next 4 years.
And if you say no, I said, but you've given
I'm asking a question. Answer my question.
Hear me. If I say no, don't give them a chance, then somebody else, the same person may say, but you've given some other people 30 years. I'm just saying. But the general rule is no. I mean, seriously, I think it depends on what the level of the expectation is about fixing up things, and are there mitigating factors why certain things didn't get achieved, for example. And then if they were low-hanging fruits and they didn't get achieved, then, yeah, why should they be there? But that could apply to many of the sports. Just check around. Have a look. Yeah. All right, more sport in an hour.
Andile, the CEO of a multinational corporation, is driving home with his daughter.
Dad, why is the tooth fairy so stingy?
Stingy? Well, she makes sure everyone gets something.
Does everyone at your company get something?
Yes, they're covered by Old Mutual Corporate's employee benefits.
Even Abdul.
Of course, he gets retirement benefits.
And Sisampo on that big machine.
She gets group risk cover if that big machine hurts her.
Wow, that's amazing, Dad.
Visit oldmutual.co.za/employee benefits and go from questions to solutions for your employees with Old Mutual Corporate. Old Mutual Life Assurance Company SA Limited is a licensed FSP and life insurer. T's and C's apply.
Our role must be to seek to build a better world.
SAFM invites you to our annual public lecture, delivered by former Minister Dr. Naledi Pandor. The theme for the lecture is 30 Years of South African Freedom. Reimagining South Africa's democracy, achievements, challenges, and the road ahead in protecting our democratic gains. The lecture will take place on the 21st of November 2024 at the Birchwood Hotel and Conference Center. Secure your seat by emailing us at info@safm.co.za.
Today, I'm part of seeking to build a better South Africa.
SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Let's talk about the numbers now with Paswane Mpatlele, Senior Account Manager at Makwe Funds Managers. Paswane, you got cash build together with local and global markets, right? Tell me about that.
Definitely, Chef. Good afternoon to your listeners. Kicking off with Cash Build, this is the building material group. They boosted over 3,000 stores and they gave us their quarterly update performance. It's a positive performance. It seems like the guys have turned the corner of 5% of group revenue was up compared to the prior period, while they've managed to keep their price pressures well controlled during the period with sale inflation at 1.4%. The South African market did a lot of the weighting, picking up the weight as it contributes the most. Sales were up by 6% and transactional volume at the tills increased. Customers are demanding their products to do DIY activities, whether you look at the new existing stores. Meanwhile, their hardware stores also did well, up by 9%. And the South African performance helped the non-core markets outside South Africa that showed some sluggish growth. But overall, their outlook is rather stable. They're looking forward to opportunities or growth opportunities as consumer confidence builds momentum into Q1 of 2025. And just looking at their performance, the stock markets were happy. The stock was over 2%, and month to date it's just above 13%. And coming into the markets quickly, after 3 days of losses, Ashraf, markets have found some buying opportunities in the different sectors. They've been buying stocks at the back of the positive results they're seeing in the companies. So we look in the US, Tesla did well, their earnings back locally in the resource sector. Anglo, you look at Cashbuild, Clicks, they came up with some positive numbers, helping cement some of the positive sentiment into buying stocks. Further on was the more economic data that came through. We saw the likes of the PMI, private sector business activity in the Eurozone, which tells us that manufacturing might have just hit the ground and is turning up as it softened in terms of their weakness. Service sector remains positive. UK business activity has lost momentum, but still in the positive. In the US, business activity has slowed some slight improvement, both in manufacturing and service sector. Overall, when you try just pick it out from there on a micro view, you can see that there's some sense of resilient global growth there with controlled price pressures. And with that said, the index is performing. We're seeing Nasdaq up 0.6 there, S&P up 0.2, Dow was down 0.2, FTSE, DAX and CAC were up 0.6, FTSE up 0.5, JSE was up 0.7 thanks to the gains in financials and resources over %. Industrials were flat. Commodity space, gold rebounds by 0.6 to $2,732 an ounce. Platinum over 1% at $1,034 an ounce. Oil up another 0.5% at $75.44 a barrel. On the FX market, with dollar easing from its 3-month highs, it has allowed some oxygen for the rand. We see the rand is trading much better. Sitting at 17.70 against the dollar, 19.12 against the euro, and 22.98 against the pound.
Right. Okay, let's sort that out. Paswani, thanks for that. We'll have another chat with you and your team sometime tomorrow. Absolutely. Cheers. Right, let's get to the calls right after this.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Okay, first up we go to Hazy View. That would be... in fact, we get to Dean in a second. Sorry, we're going to get to some of the voice notes. First up, there's a range of comments about, taxes, right?
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Can you please, man, give clarity or to clarify this leaking message from JP that they are targeting Western Cape taxi drivers? Because this month alone, I think more than 500 something of taxis impounded. Is this true or not? Just give a clarity, man, please. This is Mapelo from Cape Town.
Okay, got that. Mapelo, I think you said, right? Or Makelo. Got that noted. Let's see if we can find out more about that, right? Okay, here's another comment on the G.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. It's here in Cape Town. Ashraf, I think the DA is getting confused by the GNU. Maybe there was another document that allowed them to speak the way they're talking now. No, they joined the ANC in the government of unity. Even if every political party can be there, the ANC was the majority, from the number of voters. So the DA joining the ANC with other political parties. The way the DA is doing, it's undermining the unity of the government and undermining other political parties as well. So for me, I feel like the DA must just quit the government and form their own so that they can dictate what they want to do. See you in Cape Town. Thank you.
Okay. It's not going to happen. Well, I think it's not going to happen. Lots of arguments, but it's not going to happen. Dean in Hazy View, hi. Dean, do I have you there? Yeah, Dean, yes. Go ahead. Hello.
Yes, look, man, in my opinion, this South Africa so-called Russia relationship, it should be reviewed. I don't think it is symbiotic, in my opinion. Look, Russia is selling oil. Me and you, we do not benefit from it, and we do not buy from Russia directly using our own currency, as our currency is much more stronger than theirs. So for me, I think it should be reviewed. It must not be this thing off between ANC, because the way it is now, it looks like it's a relationship between Russia and the ANC. And me and you, we are out in the cold. But the ANC is using the name of me and you. It says South Africa, but in true sense of it, you look at it, you see that here the only thing that the ANC is benefiting is that it learns how to talk left and walk right.
Okay, so you'd concur with the DA's view then?
Nah, it's not DA's view, it's my view.
Okay. All right, Dean in Hazy View. Well, that's it. That's another view, the hazy view, right? It's all rather hazy. Thanks for that, Dean. Well, it's interesting. I mean, they can't dump the Russians now. They're a major partner in the BRICS, and in fact, in terms of formations, that's a major block. Can you imagine South Africa say we're not going to talk to Russia? I may hear you to say don't be too pally with them, and I also hear, I think those that have sentiments to say that South Africa talks about a historical relationship with Russia. It can't also be permanent, can it? Meaning, if they do certain things that you feel they flouted certain rules, do you hold them to account or not? And the same would apply to China, for example. There are big question marks around China's human rights record. Pule in Matlosana. Hi, Pule.
Yes, sir. How are you?
Yeah, very good indeed. Go ahead.
I'm good. Look here, this GNU, it has been given by the voters. They didn't give one party outright majority like it has been happening for the past 30 years. So they said, and they still give ANC the majority. ANC remained the majority. That's why they have a president. That's why they have all the strategical position, like the defense, the home affairs, you name them, you know. So they're out of government, but they are still holding strategical position in government. Now, all I'm saying, the ANC just need 11% to constitute 50+1. And they can do it with a DA and Patriotic Alliance, or invite EFF or MK Party. Then DA can go wherever they want to go. It's fine. But the president has a blue book, has a book that he direct and instruct him what to do. So there's nothing like that the president has to get a permission from the DA. DA want to be the boss of the GNU. There are more than 10 parties in the GNU. That if president has, they are equal partners, by the way. If president has to consult DA, he can also consult Patriotic Alliance. That this is what I'm going to do. Then we don't have a government, because every time the president has to do the presidential issues, has to consult political parties. It's not taking us anywhere.
But are they equal partners? I mean, I think, or would the partnerships be played along the line of who's got the most votes, which would mean the ANC and the DA, more than the other parties?
There's nothing like that on the book that they have signed.
Okay, I hear you.
The notice of intent that this one is a bigger brother, this one is a smaller brother. They are equal partners. It's just DA and ANC. They've got more seats in parliament compared to other political parties. But ANC just needed 11%, or 11%.
Well, I can't
see the government and make 50+1. If they invite EFF and take UDM, DA can go to hell.
Okay.
Then they'll constitute the government, because ANC will have 50+1 with UDM and with
all right.
EFF.
Let's leave it at that. The question is if they do that, and can they do that? Pule, thanks for that. Vuyizwa, let's get your thoughts.
Yes, thank you so much, Ashraf. I think this DA is so toxic, you know, and when you sit down and try to reflect, DA is the same old reptile, you know, that did all those atrocities, their forefathers, against our grandparents, our mothers, our sisters, our brothers and sisters, and they seem not to learn because they want to control. It's not about what if it was America, Ukraine, in other parts of the world that they support. They're not going to make such hullabaloo.
But do you not understand that they would want to try and control certain things? I mean, they want to show their power. I mean, that's really why they all. In fact, the ANC themselves argue with each other. ANC versus ANC.
You know what, Ashraf? The problem that we have right now is the media that we have now. Should this media representatives that are in now, should they have been in the time of apartheid, wouldn't have gone far where we are now. We wouldn't have reached, because you guys stand up and want to support something that you can see. You can hear, you can see yourself, and you know the history of this country. So you don't need to actually. No one wanted us anywhere in the world, but Russia gave us shelter. They gave us refuge. They gave us education. They gave us place to stay. They gave us food. Where were they? Because they should have come up, told their parents, go and take
Okay.
those.
I won't say it's the only ones. I don't think Russia were the only ones. They were one of the most significant, but they're not the only ones. Just so that we got that right. For you as well, thanks for that call. Well, I tell you what. I mean, I see many people are critical of the GA, but are you critical of the ANC as well? I mean, ultimately, in terms of what about the ANC dealing with itself? And often they don't deal well.
Good day, Ashraf. This is Pizzo here in Haswalter. Ashraf, the other thing, I just want to tell Colin, the guy who just called you now, he mustn't address the president as this Ramaphosa. This is uncalled for. He mustn't do that. This is the state president of this country. He mustn't address him like this Ramaphosa. He can be upset or what, but he must never use that word again. You must reprimand him next time if he will try it again. I know he's going to do it again. Thank you, Alraf.
I think you've reprimanded him already. Thank you for that. This is the National Pulse. What for you are the big issues that moves the pulse today? Certainly the ANC-DA issue is not going to go away. And in fact, the GNU has not gone away since the GNU was formed. Not one day on this show.
The citizens of Manchester are highly motivated to cruise with a convincing victory against Southampton.
It's brilliant from Grealish, and Guardiola's up there as well. And City lead.
Meanwhile, the Saints are pumped up to fight for the entire match duration away from home.
It's flicked on, and again the Saints have the effort, and this time he does score. And we're back in the game.
This is the Premier League. Catch the exciting contest between reigning champions Manchester City FC and Southampton FC on Saturday 26 October at 3:30 p.m. live on SABC3. Also available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Tell you what, there's an American election coming up soon, right? So here's this comment, Ashraf: if the GNU wants to be progressive for a better South Africa, they need to start speaking to Donald Trump. Got that? Maybe you should wait to see whether Trump gets elected as the president or not of the USA. Then you talk to someone. Right, we talk every Thursday around tech issues. So let's talk about the Kwamsha app. Now, you may wonder, we all have issues. What about, is there an app or a study that can help you understand depression in adolescents and how to deal with that? So I understand there's an app that can do just that. Welcome to the Kwamsha app. Dr. Bianca Moffat is with me, a medical doctor and researcher based at Wits University. Dr. Moffat, good chatting to you, connected to the National Pulse.
Hi. Yeah, good speaking to you.
Thank you, Ryan. So tell me about what is this app and what does it solve?
Yeah, okay. Well, basically, depression is a really under-recognized and under-treated issue. In South Africa, approximately 30% of adolescents are affected by depression. And although effective treatments for depression exist, the reality is that most young people don't have access to them. And that's true for most of the country, but the gap in care is really widest in rural areas where health services are generally much less developed. So the DBAT study was conducted to address this. And in essence, we wanted to develop a treatment for adolescent depression that was both effective and scalable. And given that there's been such a rapid global increase in access to mobile phones and the internet, and adolescents are early adopters of digital technology, we thought that this was a potential way to bridge the gap. On the other hand, though, very few web or app-based digital psychological treatments have actually been developed for adolescents in low and middle-income countries, and even fewer have actually been rigorously tested to see if they actually work. So we decided to adapt behavioral activation, which is an evidence-based psychological treatment for delivery in a digital format and to adolescents in a rural African context. But we also know that sustained engagement with mental health apps is generally low. People tend to use them once or twice and then not again. So we specifically worked with adolescents and other stakeholders to develop an app that they felt they'd use and which would be helpful to them. So I can tell you a bit more about the app, what it looks like.
Well, maybe let's just pause and say, first of all, I mean, who would, in terms of anybody wanting to use it, right, the app that is, right, how would they decide that? You know, I know it's available, but like, at what point does a person say, okay, I'm suffering from, you know, depression, I will use the app, or would that be reliant on someone else to guide them to that?
Yeah, so at the moment, we've just completed a pilot randomized control trial to test how feasible and acceptable the app is, and get some initial estimates of whether it's actually effective in reducing symptoms of depression, which is just really important formative work to do before you make something like this available. But the idea, yes, is that you could screen for depression amongst adolescents. For example, we screened in schools when we recruited into our study. And then once you've identified the young people who are struggling, you can make the app available to them.
Okay, so now they have the app, and some are either themselves or they know somebody else who may be suffering from a type of depression, and they do what? What are the features of the app?
Great, yeah. So basically, the app was designed as a narrative game that teaches the key principles of behavioral activation through two stories, the football match and the song contest. And they've each got 6 episodes. And at the end of each episode, the adolescents complete activities which are designed to help them apply these principles to their own lives. And they also get a phone call from a trained peer mentor, so someone just a little bit older than them who speaks their language and helps them apply these principles to their daily lives.
And I mean, so that would be the one aspect. When you talk about a trained mentor, is that a live conversation?
So that's a telephonic conversation, yeah.
Okay, because that brings me on to the other point about, how medically sound is this app? And I know you're a medical doctor, so you're going to say yes, right? Tell me more about the medical support getting into it.
Yeah, so, that's exactly why we built this app. There's a lot of apps out there, but very few have been tested. In sub-Saharan Africa, there's only been one randomized controlled trial of digital psychological treatment for adolescents with depression. So we had input from a team of mental health specialists in South Africa and beyond, with the study co-principal investigators being based at Wits and Oxford. And the app was based on behavioral activation, which is an evidence-based psychological therapy, which essentially works on the principle of getting people to identify and engage in activities that are personally meaningful and enjoyable, and thereby interrupt the sort of negative cycle of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that are characteristic of depression. And behavior, yeah.
Yeah, carry on.
Yeah, so behavioral activation is, one of the psychotherapies that it's been shown to be, as effective but less costly than the cognitive behavioral therapy, which is the therapy that's been the most widely studied. And BAs also lends itself well to adapting to a digital format and to diverse contexts, and it's been effectively used in other parts of the world by lay healthcare providers.
Okay, so to what degree has this app been tested now in terms of that it's working?
Yeah, so we've recently finished our pilot randomized control trial, which included, we screened 800 and included about 200 adolescents in the study. And essentially, in a nutshell, and the results of that study will be published soon, but in a nutshell, it shows that this is a really promising approach. We had good engagement with the intervention, but we need to do a further larger study which will determine the effectiveness of the app in reducing symptoms of depression. So we got some great feedback from adolescents about what worked, what didn't, and how we can adapt it further. As well as who's likely to benefit from the app. But we need to do some further work before it could be made available.
Well, that is my next question. Is it available to the public?
Not at the moment. So I guess when things are developed through in the scientific field, we really want to make sure that the benefits outweigh the harms before we make it publicly accessible.
Okay, looking forward to you giving us the green light to say download, right? And we'll see what happens then. Dr. Bianca Moffat was a medical doctor and researcher based at Wits University, talking about the Kuamsha app, which is spelled KUAMSHA, right? But as you've heard, at the moment they're still doing some trials, so you can't exactly download and use it now. But that may come up hopefully sooner than later. It's 5 o'clock. Here's the news with Greg.
Thank you, Ashraf. In this news update, a call to monitor what learners eat and 17 people killed in latest Israeli airstrike. Good day to you. The Mpumalanga Education Department's called on both parents and school governing bodies to monitor what learners eat at school and outside. This after 24 learners from a primary school outside of Mbombela were rushed to hospital after they complained of stomach ache and vomiting. It's alleged they consumed snacks they bought from a spaza shop. Department spokesperson Gerald Sambo.
And currently, the indication that we're getting is that these learners are stable. They are currently receiving the necessary medical attention. However, we're going to rely on the report from the hospital through the Department of Health that will indicate clearly what caused the learners. But the allegations that we're getting from the school is that there are some learners who bought some snacks from a local spaza shops, and they suspect that these snacks is the cause, of this sickness. These learners ranges from between 6 and 12.
The case against diamond dealer Louis Liebenberg, together with his wife and their 7 co-accused, has been postponed to the 31st of October at the Bronkhorstspruit Magistrates Court east of Pretoria. Liebenberg, who's believed to be the mastermind, allegedly advertised unpolished diamonds on social media and invited potential investors to invest in his business with a promise of a lucrative return which never materialized. The investors were allegedly scammed of more than 4 billion rand. Sachin Naidu reports.
All 9 suspects appeared in the dock today for the first time since their arrests last week. 3 of the suspects were granted bail ranging from 20,000 to 100,000 rand each. The other 6 suspects, including Liebenberg and his wife, will return to court next week, where some of them are expected to apply for bail.
Hundreds of emerging entrepreneurs attending the South African Future Trust Summit in Sandton, north of Johannesburg, are hoping to use this opportunity to find partners and upscale their businesses. The gathering, which is in its second year, brings together exhibitors and investors in the small to medium business space. Some of the township-based entrepreneurs attending the summit say their primary challenge is scaling their business.
So we recognize that we'd have a lot of our audience here, and we'd get an opportunity to tell them more about the app and how it can help them grow their businesses, run their businesses a bit better.
So it's quite a great thing for us to come together, especially as South Africans, and see how we can change our business landscape into something that could compete with the world out there.
2 separate crashes involving emergency medical service crews have occurred in KwaZulu-Natal. In the first incident, a bus transporting 60 patients and 2 crew members overturned in Mkanyakude after hitting a cow. 1 person died. In the second incident, an emergency vehicle transporting 2 injured miners to hospital also overturned. No injuries were reported. Provincial Health Department spokesperson Nati Olifant.
The bus had to come across a stray cow which it hit before losing control. 1 patient who was trapped in the wrecked bus sadly passed away, while the rest of the passengers and 2 crew members sustained minor injuries and were transported to Emseleni Hospital. In the second incident, an EMS vehicle transporting 2 injured miners from Ichade Hospital to Ngwelezane overturned when it also hit a stray cow. Fortunately, no injuries were sustained by staff, patients or their relatives.
Cape Winelands District municipalities deployed firefighters to a blaze on the mountains near Worcester and the Boland. Cape Winelands municipal spokesperson Joanne Otto says the fire spread due to a sudden change in wind conditions during a controlled burn. At least 17 Palestinians have been killed in an Israeli airstrike on a school in central Gaza, where people displaced by the fighting were sheltering. The Israeli military said it hit a Hamas command and control center embedded in a compound formerly used as a school. The BBC's Wera Davis has more.
The raw pictures that some of us have seen here show several dead bodies, many of them clearly children being brought out of the Nuseirat refugee camp. Now, this is a very densely populated area. This attack on the Nuseirat refugee camp is in the centre of Gaza, not the area where Israel has been focusing much of its attacks in recent days. Israel says it attacked what it says was a command and control centre in a school compound.
Top story, the Mpumalanga Education Department's called on both parents and school governing bodies to monitor what learners eat at school and outside. That's SAFM News. I'm Greg Close.
And coming up in your sports this hour, Makram heaps praise on the Proteas after beating Bangladesh. SASCOC set to elect new board in November, and Banyana all set for their clash against Denmark. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N1 southbound in Four Ways is queuing towards Winnie Mandela Drive exit. The M1 northbound in Woodmead is queuing towards Buccleuch interchange. Bays Nordia Drive in Rand Park Ridge has a crash between Eastwood Avenue and Easterhoe Drive, and the N1 northbound in Midrand slow moving towards Samrand Road. In KZN, the N2 northbound queuing towards Sibaya Drive exit. The N3 westbound is where crime scenes reported involving a fatal shooting just before Spaghetti Junction, so the road's been closed off and there are some heavy delays. The M4 northbound is queuing towards Virginia Airport. The N2 northbound is queuing towards the M25 Commercial Highway exit, and Ballet Road southbound is queuing towards the M7 highway due to traffic diverting from the N3 highway closure. In Cape Town, the M5 southbound queuing towards Cromboom Road exit. The N1 inbound has a stationary vehicle reported after Plattekloof. Stellenbosch Hotel Road eastbound is slow moving towards Nooiensfontein, and Kendall Road in Bergvliet is closed between Mayberg Street and Main Road, so expect delays and diversions. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable for you. Whether it's a civil, criminal, or labor-related matter, we have a nationwide panel of attorneys standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195 and we'll call you back. Clientele General is a licensed non-life insurer and an authorized FSP. Standard rates and terms and conditions apply.
Toulouse have a concrete plan to triumph and maintain their top spot. Meanwhile, fourth position Toulon have set their minds on a win to pressurize the three teams above them. This is the top 14. Witness the incredible action, the top 14 rugby encounter between rock leaders Toulouse and RC Toulon. This Sunday, 27 October at 10 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also, available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game. Namibia and Seychelles both want their presence felt when they meet at 12 midday, while Mzansi's Banyana confront neighbors Eswatini at 3 p.m. This is the doubleheader of the Hollywood Bets COSAFA Women's Championship. Catch both matches on Friday, 25 October, live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, so whether you're in East London or Khalishire or Cape Town, do you have your fingers on the National Pulse? And what does that say to you about South Africa? What does your pulse tell you, right? In the meantime, here's some developments. Just about half an hour ago, Mozambique's Electoral Commission announced the results of this month's presidential election. Now, the CNE said that Frelimo's Daniel Chapo secured 70.67% of the vote, and the independent candidate Venancio Mondlane secured 20.32% of the vote. Right now, remember, before the results were even announced, we spoke about this on the show a few days ago, but Mondlane had already cast doubts about their accuracy. He has called on citizens to protest over the outcome and the recent killings of two opposition-linked figures who were shot over the weekend. One of the men was Mondlane's lawyer. Chapo is 47 years old, will take over from Felipe Nyusi, Nyusi had completed 2 terms as the president in Mozambique. So there you are, a significant breaking story in terms of the developments to South Africa's neighbor, Mozambique. Now, just one other thing. Every Friday, today's Thursday, I know, every Friday we have the fireside chat. I get a person in from 5 o'clock, like now, till 6 o'clock, and we chill for an hour talking about some of the biggest issues and some light-hearted moments. Well, my guest tomorrow, do not miss it, the Archbishop Thabo Makgoba. Archbishop Thabo Makgoba, my guest tomorrow coming up on the Fireside Chat. Do not miss that. Well, do you miss life without the GNU? I don't know. Can you just imagine? I'm having difficulty understanding what South Africa was like before 29th of April, isn't it? Let's talk about some of the developments that have happened. We know that we've been talking about it extensively, about the DA and the ANC and Ramaphosa and government and Russia being an ally at the BRICS summit. Right? So yesterday we spoke to the DA national spokesperson, Willie Oukamp, about the statement that they released condemning President Ramaphosa for referring to Russia as a valuable ally and a friend. Remember, they were saying he's speaking effectively out of turn. He should be getting the buy-in of the entire GNU, not just the ANC, or not just thinking that he leads alone. It's not the case any longer, right? Now, none of the DA's cabinet ministers are attending the 16th BRICS summit. The question is, are there cracks in the GNU deepening? I've suggested already that, listen, there's lots of argument, but they somehow realize they have to stick together. So we thought, let's sort of dig deeper and help us understand just where this thing is playing out, right? With Professor Dirk Coetzee, who's political analyst from the University of South Africa. Appreciate your time. Thanks for connecting to the National Pulse.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right, so, well, help us with this. So are we in danger of seeing the GNU breaking apart?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I'm cautious because, one can't say 100% yes or no. Politics is always the art of the possible. But the way in which I understand the dynamics of the Government of National Unity, the way in which I understand also how coalitions in general work, is that it is a situation where, because it's not just one party, the idea of contestation is inherent in such a formation. If we look even at governing parties which consist only of one party governing a government, then these type of internal dynamics and internal debates are also taking place. And then there's not necessarily a question of whether it will break up. Take, for example, now the position of the SACP in relation to the ANC with respect to the Government of National Unity. It's very critical, but we are not saying, well, this is the end of the alliance. And I think the same applies to the Government of National Unity. The one thing which I think one should say as a point of departure is that because there was not a very long period of negotiations, like in many other countries in the world when they form a government, a coalition, that they could reach an agreement on the details of issues. They only agreed on the very broad principles. So as a result of that, and because it's the first experience now in 30 years, it looks like the way in which it happens is that the ANC's policies, or the policies of the government before the election, is sort of the point of departure. And then over time it starts to be adjusted, but in a very incremental way. It's not one big event and there's a new policy. It develops from issue to issue because public policy, the way in which we as political scientists looks at it, is not only in terms of documents and statements and speeches, but it is also about what does the government do in practical terms. That is also policy. And I think what we are therefore seeing is that the slow development, compilation, adjustment of policies that are emerging. Just to give you divert our attention a little bit away from the current situation, and that is that not long ago was the FOCAC summit of the Forum for China-African Cooperation in Beijing.
Right.
The DA did attend that, including John Steenhuisen as Minister of Agriculture. He was actually very enthusiastic about it, and the developments and the agreements that are reached there. So it is, I think, will be an oversimplification to say, yes, the DA is highly critical of the ANC's historical allies, and therefore there is the risk of cracks within the Government of National Unity. I use this example as a way of saying, just look at how the dynamic components of this new situation that's developing, and our own sort of perceptions about all the parties. I think we will have to put it a little bit on hold to see what is developing.
Well, I mean, the points you bring up are so valid, right? And I think the examples you've given, I've also spoken about a similar example of when you talk about a GNU, but there's also like a party unity, and the ANC's example within its own self, ANC versus ANC, and the ANC versus SACP is a good example of things where they argue daily, but they still are together, right? So points taken. Now, having said that, have you been surprised at the level of outbursts, particularly by the DA against the ANC and the ANC against the DA? And I'm not talking about just the BRICS issue, I'm talking about across the board here.
No, I'm not actually surprised. I mean, what most people anticipated didn't happen, as that it was a major explosion. What we have to take into account, it's two very different parties that have to live together now. So these changes or differences are more than expected. It is actually, if it doesn't happen, people will say, "But what's going on? This is so abnormal that we can't really trust the situation then." So at the same time, I think what we are seeing now is that something like a coalition or the government of national unity works at two levels. The one is the public one, and the one is within the circles of government. The public one is there in order for these parties to maintain their legitimacy and credibility. And that means that they must avoid any impression that they have been co-opted by other parties, that they have lost their own identity, and that they cannot play the role for which they have been elected, because that is the mandate. Each one of them has a mandate to implement within the government of national unity. That's the public side. And both the ANC and the DA especially, their supporters are, very many of them are actually critical about their cohabitation, and that they are scared that either of them are going to compromise and lose actually their identities. So the public pronouncements by both President Ramaphosa as well as John Steenhuisen, or Minister Steenhuisen now, will sometimes be overstatements in order, and it's mainly addressed to their supporters, not to the general public, in order to justify them to say, well, we are still what we are supposed to be. But then when it comes to the internal workings, for example, cabinet meetings and meetings of the clusters of the cabinet and so on, because we are not there to see it for ourselves, but I think that is where the real working together is taking place. So it's at these two levels.
Okay, I mean, those are interesting insights. So you're effectively saying all these parties have a public face and a private internal face, and they're not exactly the same faces. Well, in fact, they're certainly not the same faces, if I take what you're saying correctly. So with that in mind, therefore, just if we relegate the thoughts of the voting public for the moment, does that mean that no matter what is said publicly, that privately these party leaders, when they go off air, when they criticize the other, when they go back to their own caucus meetings privately, would they still be talking about the other party, or is it just a case of move on, man? No matter what we say, we're going to stick together.
Yes, I think it's more the latter. I don't want to present it as if they are completely ignorant or that they completely ignore the party dynamics of it. But I think when it comes to the question, are we going to continue with this arrangement or not, then it is less about what the parties are saying and more about what is it in for us also. Each one of the parties, whether it's the DA or the Patriotic Alliance or the Freedom Front Plus or what, all of them see that there's some advantage in being there.
Yeah.
And that it can be political, that can be in terms of their longer term projection of where they are. And what will be the cost if they pull out? And that's the important point, because none of them want to be seen that they are spoilers, that they are going to the anticipation, the sort of the good sentiment that still exists, that it is spoiled by some withdrawals. And it applies especially to the DA, because the DA is an absolutely key party for the continuation of the government of national unity.
Would you say, if I then take what you're saying, that your last point, would you say that in that case, that it is true that all these parties, but in particular the ANC and in particular the DA, they've understood that they've signed up for a 5-year contract, that no matter what happens in between that, and whichever final notices and threatening notices they give out or receive, they understand they've committed to a 5-year period. For all the reasons you've mentioned, they see advantage in being in the GNU over disadvantage.
Yes, that is. I think you summarized it very well. That is, I think, how they see it. And with the polls that we have now seen, this one set of polls that came out, all the parties, or the majority of the big parties who are part of the government of national unity, according to those polls, actually increased their support. And the EFF and the MK support has reduced, or have reduced. So they can see the advantage of it at this point in time. We don't know what will be the case in 2 or 3 or 4 years' time, but at the moment that is the case.
Okay.
So I think this is the logic that sort of guides these different parties at the moment.
Well, there you are. And therefore, I think when we say DA versus ANC, it could also be just as much ANC versus ANC, because whatever it is, there are divisions across the board of these major power blocks. Thank you for your time, Professor Dirk Coetzee. Really very important insights coming out. And maybe it makes the point of what I've said just now, that can I see this GNU crumbling now? I really don't see it. I can see tons of arguments, but I don't see them falling apart for all the reasons that Professor Dirk Coetzee effectively confirmed. But then what do we know, isn't it?
Andile, the CEO of a multinational corporation, is driving home with his daughter.
Dad, why is the tooth fairy so stingy?
Stingy? Well, she makes sure everyone gets something.
Does everyone at your company get something?
Yes, they're covered by Old Mutual Corporate's employee benefits.
Even Abdul?
Of course, he gets retirement benefits.
And Sisampo on that big machine.
She gets group risk cover if that big machine hurts her.
Wow, that's amazing, Dad.
Visit oldmutual.co.za/employee benefits and go from questions to solutions for your employees with Old Mutual Corporate. Old Mutual Life Assurance Company SA Limited is a licensed FSP and life insurer. T's and C's apply.
The Southern African Queens of the Beautiful Game will produce real drama, passion, and excitement on Monday, 28 October. Madagascar tackles Botswana live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, while Mauritius confront Malawi on SABC Plus. Both matches kick off at 12 midday. Then at 3 p.m., 7-time champion South Africa clashes with Seychelles on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. And Eswatini faces Namibia, also at 3 p.m. Everywhere, for everyone, always on SABC Plus. This is the Hollywood Best COSAFA Women's Championship, proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
The SAFM University Debate Challenge will be taking over the Western Cape. Join us for the 1-hour debate on This Week Today with Oliver Dixon from 6 to 7 p.m. on Friday, the 25th of October 2024 at the SABC Cape Town M1 Studios, where the University of Cape Town will be taking on the University of the Western Cape in what promises to be a nail-biting debate. The SAFM University Debate Challenge is an independent, non-partisan progressive initiative seeking to develop confident communicators, critical thinkers, and empowered global citizens. RSVP to info@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
I tell you what, when we reflect insofar as what is it that moves the National Pulse, and we talk about, the GNU is one of the big drivers, I tell you what, the issue of contaminated food has got to be even on an even neither on that one. It is such a big issue. There's not a day, certainly not in the last few days or week, that you can't pick up some item or the other, news item that is, and you find out, oh my goodness, man, there's been food contamination and people have been hospitalized. So now the latest one is that 24 learners from the Enzani Primary in Mpumalanga, well, they were rushed to hospital earlier today for suspected consumption of contaminated foods. Let's find out more about this story. It's really horrific because it just repeat on repeat on repeat. Michael Mgluli with me, the SABC News reporter who's been following this story. Michael, appreciate your time. Hi.
Hi, good afternoon to you and to your listeners there.
Okay, what more can you tell us? And I've said the intro, 24 learners rushed to hospital. Can you update us on that story?
Yes, indeed, 24 learners from Enzani Primary School, just a school outside Bombela in Matsulu, were this afternoon earlier rushed to the Rob Ferreira Hospital over an alleged food poisoning. It's alleged that these learners ate snacks from a spaza shop just near their school, which allegedly or reportedly led to their sickness. Well, the report that we got after speaking to the Department of Education in the province is that these learners started complaining about stomach cramps, and some even started vomiting, complaining about headaches. That's when they were rushed to the Rob Ferreira Hospital. But then it seems as if that their condition is actually stable, and they're expected to be released to their families sometime this afternoon or this evening.
So when you say condition stable, that's all 24 then, is that?
Yes, most definitely.
Okay,
all the 24 learners.
That's the good news, right? What can you tell us about the contaminated foods? I mean, how much have you learned about that story?
Well, for now, we don't have much details on really what transpired in terms of the food that they ate. But the report that we got, even from the conversations that we had with some of the learners, they told us that they bought the snacks from a spaza shop. So that's what we know for now. But as in the full details on what really caused their situation, we don't know for now, because we've been told that tests will be conducted by the hospitals.
Okay.
And we can expect maybe results after a week or so.
And would you know whether they ate the same foods, or was it different foods, considering they bought it from a spaza shop?
Well, according to our conversation with these learners, yes, they all ate the same snacks.
Okay, sure. Right. Is there anything else you can add to this?
Well, for now, there's nothing much to add except that these learners, as I've mentioned earlier, they are in a pretty much stable condition. They are well and good, and they are expected to be released to their families this afternoon or this evening. But then we'll keep on monitoring the situation, as in what's happening, and maybe we will get a chance to go to the area and talk to the community there, because this thing does not only affect the learners, because even community members, they do buy from these shops. So that's what we are planning to do.
Just one last question. This shop that they're buying from, is that a shop within the school grounds or outside the school grounds?
Well, it's outside the school grounds.
Okay. Let's leave it at that. Thanks for your time. And I'm sure we will certainly cover that developing story. Michael Mdluli, SABC News reporter there. But 24 learners hospitalized from Enzani Primary in Mpumalanga. But the good news, they seem to be all okay, according to Michael, and all discharged. And thank goodness for that, isn't it? But this issue of a recurring food contamination story and effectively therefore being poisonous it's a big deal. And it should be spoken about on an even key like the GNU. It's that big a deal, right? Well, talking about the GNU, Butana, you've got a thought. Hello.
Good afternoon, my brother.
Good
the
afternoon.
ANC must behave like the party that has 40% and DA contributed 20%. There's no free lunch. They cannot do as they please. They must understand that they have lost the elections. And there's no comparison with Communist Party. Communist Party came with nothing. They came with nothing. The DA is a key partner. They need to respect them and consult them. You can't go and have policies as you wish, as you have got won the vote.
Well, maybe both ways, Butana. Maybe both ways. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Both ways. Both must understand they must respect each other and work a plan to work together. Okay, Butana, thanks for that call. Here's another comment to the GNU.
Hi, Ashraf Monde from Kabeja. Ashraf, the guy who called earlier on and said that the idea of GNU came from the DA. He must not come to the radio and come and lie to us. If he wants to go back to sleep, he must go back to sleep. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. I'm not going to add to that. Point taken. Here's another on water.
Hi, Ashraf. Chris in Cape Town here. Just a message to the people in Gauteng that when they run out of water, that they will vote out the ANC.
Are you saying it's completely linked to water supply? We shall wait and see, right? H2O, is that right? Okay, 5:30 is Greg Host with the news headlines.
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Quick look at the headlines. The Mpumalanga Education Department has called on parents and school governing bodies to monitor what learners eat at school and outside. The Table Mountain Aerial Cableway says no one will be transported up the mountain until an all clear is given to resume operations after the cableway station caught fire. And the UN has warned that world temperatures are on track to rise by 3.1 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. There's a full update at 6 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound in central Johannesburg is queuing towards Crown Interchange. The M1 northbound in Sandton has a crash reported after Colette Drive exit. The N1 southbound in Fourways is queuing towards Winnie Mandela Drive exit. Baysnodeer Drive in Rand Park Ridge has a crash reported between Eastwood Avenue and Easterhout Drive, and Pretoria Street has a crash reported between Casonia Avenue and Kilnerton Road. In KZN, the N2 northbound queuing towards Sibaya Drive exit. The N3 westbound has a crime scene reported involving a fatal shooting just before Spaghetti Junction, causing heavy delays. The M4 northbound is queuing towards Virginia Airport. The N2 northbound queuing towards the M25 Commercial Highway, and the N3 westbound in Pietermaritzburg has a stationary truck reported near Peter Brown Drive. In Cape Town, the N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard outbound queuing towards Hospital Bend. The N1 outbound is slow moving towards the M5 Kuberg interchange. The M5 southbound is queuing towards Kromboom Road exit. The M3 southbound queuing towards Rhodes Drive. The N7 Jakes Hartwell Drive southbound is slow moving towards Voortrekker Road. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
Okay, Chubby, certainly a winning Proteas is making the headlines, right?
Absolutely. And Proteas stand-in captain Aiden Markram says that winning SA's first test in the subcontinent is a special moment for the team. After a 7-wicket win against Bangladesh, South Africa ended a decade-long drought in the Indian subcontinent with this win, and the victory moved South Africa up to 4th in the World Test Championship standings, positioning them firmly for a shot at the final in 2025.
Yeah, I think it's special. Like you mentioned, a pretty young group or slightly inexperienced group to come to the subcontinent and get a win is great for us and the environment. So creates a nice buzz in the change room and gives us a bit of belief that we can compete in conditions that are where the odds are maybe seem to be stacked against us.
Then moving on to football, African champions Banyana take on the red and white of Denmark tomorrow night in the first ever international match between the two countries. South Africa are using this match as part of the preparations for the 2025 Women's Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers early next year, and that match will be played at 6 p.m. at Denmark. And head coach Dr. Desiree Ellis says that the main objective of this match is to get back into the swing of international football. Still staying with football, Manchester United will face Fenerbahce tonight in the Europa League with a growing list of unavailable players. Skipper Bruno Fernandes is ruled out through suspension after he was sent off against Porto, while veteran defender Johnny Evans is sidelined after suffering a problem in Saturday's win against Brentford. Mason Mount, Luke Shaw and Tyrell Malacia are still out, while Lenny Yoro has returned to training but won't be available for another few weeks. And manager Erik ten Hag has admitted that the Red Devils will struggle to cope with any more injuries. Then in Olympic news, South African Sports Confederation and Olympic Committee President Barry Hendricks has confirmed that the elections for a new board will be held on the 30th of November. Hendricks also announced his intention to run for a second term, expressing confidence in securing support from the various sports federations that will participate in the vote at the Olympic House in Rosebank. The elections, which are held every 4 years, were scheduled during SASCOC's annual general meeting 3 weeks ago at its headquarters.
The elections take place on the 30th of November. The nominations forms have already been sent out by the Nominations Committee, an independent structure. The nominations close on the 31st of October. And then within 7 days, the Nominations Committee, through the Secretariat, the CEO, will announce who have put their hand up to stand for the organization.
In tennis, Novak Djokovic has withdrawn from next week's Paris Masters, and Djokovic is still in contention to qualify for the season-ending ATP Finals in Turin next month. In rugby, the Springboks have added hooker Johan Grobler and prop Ulkolo to their squad for the year-end tour to the United Kingdom following an ankle injury to Jan-Hendrik Wessels. Wessels can play prop and hooker, which means that the Boks had to call up 2 players after his withdrawal, increasing the Boks squad to 35 players. The Springboks will play tests against Scotland, England and Wales in November, with a training camp in Jersey starting on the 27th of October. Then just to wrap things up before I leave, a big congratulations to Mamelodi Sundowns. They've been nominated as one of the Club of the Year nominees for the CAF Awards, alongside the likes of Al Ahly, Zamalek, Simba, Young Africans, TP Mazembe, and the list goes on and on. So a big congratulations to Masandawana, and I'm hoping that they win this one.
Well, you certainly hope from a South African point, do they?
Of course.
But it's the whole continent. How have they matched up against the others? I don't know.
It's a tough competition. Let me just say that it's a tough one. Okay. It's a tough competition.
It's like the goalkeeper, like the FIFA Goalkeeper Award, right?
Yeah.
Which I must tell you, just by the way, I don't like the fact that it's open to a public vote. And then that whole vote with the South African goalkeeper is skewed because of the English voting. He's top of the list. In the Spanish one, he's not even in the top 5. Which then... That's ridiculous.
But I know, yes, it's open up to the public, but didn't they say that the final results, though, is not determined by the public?
Yeah, but if they don't reckon with the public's vote, then why have the public vote? Unless they're scoring money on SMSs or whatever is relevant these days. What I'm saying is, how much of a loading does that vote give them?
Yeah.
And then, do they factor in 20% of the public vote, 30%, 40%? Like how much? It's important. I generally don't like public votes to determine the best player of the year, because I think listen, we all can do it. We just mobilize extremely well.
Yeah, I also don't like it.
Now we know.
Well, that's it.
And we went on a water safari, and Mom spotted a hippo, and it said,
There is a place where you can see wonder and the wild, with breathtaking scenery and endless landscapes. Enjoy good food and embrace great taste.
And the next day we went to the Reed Dance. I saw the maidens handing over reeds to the mighty Zulu king, and the Zulu warriors chanting, Baye!
Explore all this and more in the magical Zulu Kingdom.
This message is brought to you by KZN Tourism and Film Authority.
SV Werder Bremen have already calculated that victory will keep them in the top half, while fourth-placed reigning champions Bayer Leverkusen are searching for the special key to open the door heading to the summit. This is the Bundesliga, football as it's meant to be. Catch the nail-biting encounter between SV Werder Bremen and Bayer Leverkusen this Saturday, 26 October at 6:30 p.m. live on SABC Sport on TTT Channel 4. Also available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game. Botswana and Mauritius will be bumper to bumper on each other's heels, looking for maximum points during the 12 midday clash. While at 3 p.m, the Malawians aim for a win against Madagascar, who are also highly interested in 3 points. This is the doubleheader of the Hollywood-based COSAFA Women's Championship. Catch both clashes on Saturday, 26 October, live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Still lots more to come, including our winning feature, where we have a winner from the from last week's Rising Star Awards. But for now, let's get to the numbers with Dudu Ramela, who's in for Jimmy today. Dudu, hi.
Indeed, I am. Thank you so much, Ashraf, and a very good evening to you. Let's get straight into it with MoneyWeb's contributor, Henku Kriel, in terms, Henku, of how the markets fared today.
Hello, Dudu and Ashraf and Tumi, and good evening to all of our listeners. Yes, in the US, they're still busy with trading for the day, and it looks like mixed markets at this stage, with the Dow Jones 0.3% weaker, but the S&P 500 trading 0.2% stronger, and the Nasdaq gaining 0.6% at this stage of the game. In Europe, they finished well into the green, with the FTSE 100 and the CAC 40 gaining 0.3% today, and the DAX finished 0.4% stronger. And that's very similar to how our picture looks here by us locally, where the JSE gained 0.5% today and finished at a higher level of 86,937 points. The industrial index was the sub-index which lost a bit out today. It lost 0.5%, but then the financial index and the resources index, those two made up for this, with the financial index gaining 1.1% and the resources index finishing 0.9% stronger. And look at this, you have all of your mining companies which gave a stellar performance today, like Northam, 16% up. Amplats, 14% stronger for the day. And Amplats' big friend Implats gaining 10% today. There's also Sibanye-Stillwater finishing 7.5% stronger. You don't see this every day. Here and there were some losing companies today, like Alphamin and Karoo. They lost 5% today. And then Spar and Omnia, they each lost 2%. Then we move over to the exchange rate, where the rand is moving in the right direction today, different to the direction it went in the last 3 days or so, but now heading in the right direction. 17 rand 65 to the US dollar, and for a euro, 19 rand and 10 cents. An Australian dollar, 11 rand 72, and a British pound, 22 rand 92. Then the commodities, the price of gold trading at $2,735 an ounce, platinum $1,030, and palladium $1,160 an ounce. The oil price, Brent crude, trading at $74 a barrel. And lastly but not least, the price of a Bitcoin sitting at $67,700, and that is still 1.2 million rand. And Dudu, that's how the markets performed.
Thank you so much, Henku, for that update. And here's what you can look forward to come 6 p.m. We take a look at results from Clicks, doing pretty well. We'll speak to Bettina Engelbrecht, who is the CEO of the Clicks Group. Afrimat has also reported a decline in operating profits, or rather, they have reported a decline in operating profits. Colin Ramakubati is the executive director of Afrimat, and he'll talk us through those results. Jimmy Moyaha will bring you a conversation on the power of exponential thinking and innovation. He'll be in conversation with Eliwe Ross. And of course, it is Thursday. That means our SME feature is back. We speak to the CEO of Manzi Water. We also take a look at a term you have been familiar with for some time now, more so in light of the BRICS summit happening in Russia, de-dollarization, a possibility, and what it means more so for South Africa. Adrian Seville is the Professor of Economics, Finance and Strategy at Gibbs. He'll help us make sense of that. All that and more coming up at 6 p.m. on the SFM Market Update with MoneyWeb. I'm Duduzile Ramela. Thank you very much. Just back to you, Ashraf.
Thanks for that, Dudu. Yeah, certainly looking forward to a good show coming up 6 to 7. De-dollarization. Get used to that. Maybe get used to whatever the BRICS currency may be called. Not today, sometime down the line you better get used to that. Well, are you getting used to the DA versus the ANC? Well, you better get used to that. So earlier on, Vincent Magwenya, spokesperson for the presidency, said the DA, and I'm quoting him, the DA returns the right to maintain its own foreign policy position. However, that position cannot be imposed on the president under the guise of the GNU. The president will not be micromanaged by the DA in his execution of South African policy, foreign policy, right? Now, and more, right? Now, Emma Louis Powell, who's an MP, but also the DA's spokesman on international relations, so it's very much her beat, she tweeted saying to Vincent Magwenya, saying, the president relied on the DA to get himself elected and continues to rely on the DA to get all law, including the budget, passed in Parliament. This arrogance will not end well. and then saying the ANC is but one partner in our government of national unity. Tread lightly. Oh my goodness.
X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
Well, there you are. There's another thought on that. Can't escape the GNU story.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Ashraf, DA must understand that the GNU is not about DA. It's not about DA withdrawing from the GNU. It can also be expelled from the GNU. And there is a replacement anytime. They can be chased away other than just them withdrawing. They can go and join that AfriForum there. They can form a coalition there. From Princeton.
Okay, you're making your point very strongly. Here's another.
Hi, good afternoon, Ashraf. You see, I get disturbed every day when I see either an MEC or a minister being driven by a convoy of 5-6 cars. I fail to understand why we should be driving them in all these cars. This is a waste of money. Why are we overprotecting them? They are not even in danger. I fail to understand why we're wasting money when people are people are jobless, people are in poverty in this country. Yes.
And there's more. Remember I chatted to the KZN Premier?
Good afternoon, Ashraf, team and the listeners. You just had an interview with Mr. Ntuli, my Premier of KZN. I always thought that Mr. Ntuli is an honorable man, but he's not telling you the truth. They had the operation in the morning to remove all those vagrants, homeless people that were there. By 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, all of them, if not more, were back to where they were. Yes, it was good because they did catch the wanted criminals and illegal immigrants. But that operation, other than those arrests, that operation was a waste of time. Thank you.
Okay, there you are. Gone and then back, right? Point made. Teboho, we've just lost you. Just call back. I'll certainly take your call as soon as you do come back.
Good afternoon, Ashraf and SAFM listeners. Those problems that the Premier of Gauteng was talking about are 10 times worse here in Makanda. We have huge problems of corruption going on here. Millions go missing and they can't account for it. You send letters, lawyers' letters, to the mayor, the executive mayor, the speaker, the MM, the directors, CFOs. They just ignore them. It's like they're untouchable. I wish you could come and shine the spotlight on Makanda municipality for a change. Do us that favor. And what's worse, they get money for the indigent free units. Since last August, they've never re-implemented that. We were told to reapply last August. Until now, we haven't had our 50 free indigent units.
Well, that's a very disturbing call. Thank you for that. And again, it highlights the huge problems we have in our country. I've made a note. In fact, I'm getting keys in Temba to make a note of that to say, can we maybe find out more about Makanda? But on the other hand, Kathy has a municipal watch feature, I think once a week on her show every morning, between 9 to 12. So perhaps she's covered that region, maybe not. But we will certainly find out.
Hiring extra securities and incorporating safety measurements will not be a long-term solution. If most of that money is spent on job creation, that will be a more sustainable and a viable option to try to curb crime. So why spend all of those millions on trying to curb crime by getting more police, more cameras and the like, where the money can be spent on job creation for the people, and as I mentioned, that will be a more viable and a more sustainable solution than creating and spending money on crime prevention methods.
Okay, and here's another.
Ashraf, all these people that's complaining about the DA, they are the ones that love criminals to be in charge. We had enough of criminals. So they must just accept it and leave the DA alone. They are doing a good job. Everywhere they touch, there's changed. And that is why we want the DA to be in power, and we want the DA to go on, because imagine again how much looting took place. 50 billion has been stolen from all the other parties that was involved all the time. So why don't these people want the DA not to be? Because the DA are rooting out corruption, and they are all sulking now because they cannot do what they want to do. They cannot steal anymore, Ashraf. Thank you.
Thank you. Does that caller have a point?
Hi, Ashraf. Just listening to your two last callers talking about the DA and the GNU. And what these guys can't understand is that the GNU is a government of national unity. That means that the parties should all have an equal say in policies that are made. And the last caller is talking about the DA, about how the DA punished their parents and so on. What a lot of nonsense. That has nothing to do with it. That's what happened in the apartheid days with the nationalist government. The DA is not the nationalist government. Many of us whites eventually voted for the apartheid to end, and we wanted the whole thing gone, and this is what came out of it. Nationalists lost power in the government, and eventually new parties were formed, and the DA is part of the new era, not the old era. Thank you, Mike in Kabeja.
Okay, Mike, interesting point. I mean, you did vote for apartheid to end. I'm sure you won that, but I hear what you're saying. You then people need to understand that as you move to a transition to a new state, so to speak, then you will get some of the old, but every one of them effectively have transformed themselves. Let's talk winning after this.
Mubango returns for an explosive new season on SABC2. A renaissance of new beginnings, intrigue, and drama with old enemies and new characters. Catch the rebirth season of Mubango every Monday to Friday at 9 p.m. on SABC2 or stream it on SABC Plus. Mubango, ukovela panda. SABC2.
Namibia and Seychelles both want their presence felt when they meet at 12 midday, while Mzansi's Banyana confront neighbors Eswatini at 3 p.m. This is the doubleheader of the Hollywood Bets COSAFA Women's Championship. Catch both matches on Friday, 25 October, live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the
Andile, the CEO of a multinational corporation, is driving home with his daughter.
Dad, why is the Tooth Fairy so stingy?
Stingy? Well, she makes sure everyone gets something.
Does everyone at your company get something?
Yes, they're covered by Old Mutual Corporate's employee benefits.
Even Abdul.
Of course, he gets retirement benefits.
And Sisampa on that big machine.
She gets group risk cover if that big machine hurts her.
Wow, that's amazing, Dad.
Visit oldmutual.co.za/employee benefits and go from questions to solutions for your employees with Old Mutual Corporate. Old Mutual Life Assurance Company SA Limited is a licensed FSP and life insurer. T's and C's apply.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Right, so let me tell you, by the way, of course, tomorrow we will chat to Archbishop Makgoba. Looking forward to that as part of the feature we call the Fireside Chat. So really looking forward to that. Do join us from 5 to 6 p.m. Now, we certainly end the show every day with a feature we call Winning. We speak to people or organizations, institutes that are top in their game. So last week, in fact 2 weeks back, we had the Rising Star Awards, the TransUnion Rising Star Awards. I was invited, could not attend because I was absolutely mock, having just arrived back from my whirlwind tour of, Toronto, Canada, Montreal, London, and just come back the same afternoon. So I was certainly jet-lagged, could not get there. But there clearly are winners. They don't wait for me. And amongst the range of winners, one of them is Bianca Bila, who's a senior digital advisory consultant at NTT Data Inc. So, Bianca, we're chatting to you because you are a winner. And great of you to talk to us, and thanks for connecting.
Hello, Ashraf. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And of course, you have been judged one of the winners of the TransUnion Rising Star Awards for this year. I mean, that is a fabulous accolade, because I certainly know the stature of the event, right?
Oh, it was awesome. I feel very, very humbled to be recognized across, with all of our different talent in the country. It's amazing.
And of course, you asked them why, didn't you?
No, I didn't. But yeah.
You mean you were too busy just celebrating?
No, absolutely. I mean, big shiny trophies. What can we say?
Yeah. Tell me about, so of course, in the absence of you asking them why, there has to be lots of guesswork in terms of why you were judged one of those winners right now. You are in the digital space or digital advisory space. Tell me more about what is it you do, and I mean, no time to be modest, about your achievements and at being top of your game.
Ashraf, I think I really am part of an incredible company at NTT Data. Over the last 6 years, I've just been part of a really supportive company and lots of incredible opportunities to do amazing things in the digital space. But I think the one thing that probably stood out was our impact in the youth development space, especially, bringing a lot of grads into our technology programs and trying to upskill them quite quickly across a number of different technologies. And I think that stood out to the judges.
And how does that play out in practical terms? When we talk about the impact, I'm certainly keen on impact, but an example of how that impact plays out?
I think, we've obviously got mass youth unemployment across the country, and obviously we aren't able to help millions of people. But I mean, if you can make a positive impact with a group of grads each year, hopefully that'll be a knock-on impact on their careers, and we can get more grads to the program. And I think ultimately through GradStar, through Rising Star, I mean, Laura and the rest of the team at Black Ark have done incredible work to try and just showcase some of the talent in the country and get employment for a lot of these grads.
But I think that's important, because you're right. One thing is just being a graduate or being skilled, but if they're not highlighted or a spotlight shined on them, we just don't know enough about them, do we?
Absolutely. And I think there's such a massive talent pool out there. How can we connect them with the right employers and also get them the right sort of skills, be it in the technology space or any of our different sectors, but also having the right sort of mentorship and individuals who are able to help them. A lot of these grads are coming into the workplace first time, needing some personal skills and personal development, and trying to pair them with those kind of individuals. So structured graduate programs and mentorship is so key.
So let's talk about that graduate development program you're involved in. Tell me more about it.
So I think this was started a couple of years ago. Probably, I think our first one that we held was in 2020, even during COVID. And we started with a very small group of grads of about 11 people. And since then, it's absolutely grown and flourished. I think we take in about 20 grads each year. We've done a few for some of our clients, so even they are starting to grow their graduate spaces as well.
And in terms of that initial point about your degrees of expertise to try and address some of the serious digital issues in the world, certainly more and more people need to address digital and embrace it, but companies need to embrace and address some of the challenges that they face coming out of digital. Tell me more about that.
I think just from the digital space, obviously it's moving so quickly. So trying to address it from a skills perspective, I think, is one of the biggest issues. And that's with trying to get a lot of the graduates involved and upskilling them as quickly as possible. They're actually able to fill the gap that we see a lot across the industry, in the cloud space, across automation. So I think from a talent perspective, that's one way. But yeah.
Yeah. And in terms of you being acknowledged now, right, what would you do with this? You clearly have you're bright enough to understand the leverage an award gives you, right? What do you anticipate may happen?
Well, I hope that this isn't where it stops, absolutely. I hope in future to be able to reach more grads and more individuals, especially from a development perspective. I always feel guilty that there's only a couple after every cohort that we get to access each year. So I think for me, I'd love to be able to make a bit of a difference in our country from a youth development perspective, and also trying to just get more grads employed, because I think we can.
Well, I mean, a good example of this, you win an award 2 weeks ago. You have a voice, you have a national voice now, and a sense of influence. I mean, and how would you use that influence in a very directed way?
Well, I think maybe one example is in our Rising Star competition. They asked us, how do we look at inclusion and trying to get more people involved? I think if there was a way for us to try and create a bit of a platform, have grads upskill across a number of different technologies on a platform, and once they get to a certain level, after they've maybe completed some skills, completed some exams, that their profiles become available to a number of different employers. And we can create similar to LinkedIn, but it's very verified based on the different certifications they may do across different industries. They may be able to be employed off the back of that. So I'm hoping putting this out into the universe, it's something that we could start working on.
Well, we certainly want to deal with champions and people are winning in their game, and to ensure that the country as a whole is winning as well. So in that case, great talking to you, Bianca. We're certainly going to follow what you do moving forward, and I hope you win a heck of a lot more than lose. And so are the people that you interact with. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Ashraf. Really appreciate it.
There we are. Well done to Bianca Bila, the Senior Digital Advisory Consultant at NTT Data Inc., one of the winners of the 2024 TransUnion Rising Star Awards. And that's the show. That's the National Pulse. I'm part of it. You certainly are part of it in terms of driving it. And the big issues today, clearly, it does not go away. The GNU, ANC, not an DA, but ANC versus DA. That's how it comes across. We'll talk again tomorrow and see what are the big issues that touches the National Pulse. It's now time for the news at 6. Here's Greg.
Thank you again, Ashraf. A call to monitor what learners eat and a major rise in world temperatures. Good evening. The Mpumalanga Education Department's called on parents and school governing bodies to monitor what learners eat at school and outside school. This after 24 learners from a primary school outside of Mbombela were rushed to hospital